Chapter 524. A mountain gate suitable for the development of Chunyang Palace for at least thousands of years in the future, and the inheritance of a martial arts sect. These 2 points alone had already made the head of the palace and the elders speechless. Only Wang Yong, with a proud and happy face, no one was happier than him. The achievements of the grand disciple were the glory of the master ancestor. Now among all the elders, was there a more glorious master ancestor than the old man? Great credit, no need to ask. Wang Yong waved his hand and directly set the tone for the actions of his grand disciple. If this was not a great credit, what was it? Even if others were dissatisfied, there was no reason. I will record one of your great contributions, No. 2. The head of the palace was also unequivocal and directly gave an affirmative answer. As for the sect's hidden danger of being destroyed because of Yang Qin's revenge on Luo Yuan, Yang Qin had already returned, and the other party was dead. What was the matter? However, great credit was great credit, but everyone couldn't think of how to reward Yang Qin. Speaking of it, it was also a happy trouble. Other sects were headaches about their disciples not making progress, but Chunyang Palace was having a headache about how to reward the disciples who had made great contributions. I don't think there is a need to reward anything. Elder Gao Shiyan, who had just spoken, suddenly interjected. What do you mean? Wang Yong stared at him on the spot. His own grand disciple had made a great contribution, but he did not reward him. How could this be justified? Simply cancel all the rewards for Yang Qin. Gao Shiyan ignored Wang Yong's attitude and said, this kind of great contribution, since it can't be rewarded, simply don't reward him. In the future, if Yang Qin wants to use any resources of the sect, he can speak at any time. As long as the sect can come up with it, he will take it. If you want to use someone, you can talk to them in advance and use them directly. Why worry about the reward? I think so. When Wang Yong heard this, he was the first to agree. Gao Shiyan's words clearly promoted Yang Qin to the elder level of treatment in Chunyang Palace, and only the elders and the head of the palace could enjoy such treatment. It was probably because Yang Qin's current cultivation was too low and his seniority was relatively low, so he didn't make it clear. What do you think? Palace Master Zhang Jiao did not say much, but turned his head and asked the other elders for their opinion. The other elders also nodded slightly at this moment. No one had any objections. It couldn't be helped. The things that this disciple of his did were truly indescribable. Thinking about how Liang Xiaoming had betrayed him in the past, Yang Qin's loyalty was further enhanced. That settled. Palace Master Zhang Jiao saw that everyone had no opinion and directly made a decision. In fact, he was also troubled by Yang Qin's reward. Since Yang Qin had made such a great contribution, he should give him a corresponding status. Originally, Palace Master Zhang Jiao thought so, but he couldn't take the initiative to propose it. Elder Gao's proposal was in line with the intention of Palace Master Zhang Jiao. This time, it was Yang Qin's turn to be surprised. Of course, he knew what this so-called reward meant, but at this moment, all the elders supported him, and Yang Qin couldn't even say a word of refusal. Yang Qin, your safety is related to the development of my Chunyang Palace sect. Palace Master Zhang Jiao was not polite to Yang Qin and directly admonished, in the future, if there is such a thing, be careful. If there is a problem, go directly back to Chunyang Palace. The sect will make a decision for you. You don't have to escape to the dangerous depths of the sea. Why did Yang Qin escape to the sea? To put it bluntly, he was afraid of bringing disaster to Chunyang Palace. This point was clear to Yang Qin, and the high-level members of Chunyang Palace were also clear. Yang Qin would rather risk his own death than bring danger to the sect. No one could blame such a disciple. Yes, Palace Master, the sect's love, Yang Qin certainly would not refuse. However, at the same time, Yang Qin also suddenly thought of a problem. He had a shuttle, and he could escape when necessary. It seemed that these high-level members of Chunyang Palace should also have more security protection. Palace Master, elders. Yang Qin cupped his hands at the several seniors present and said solemnly, this disciple has some other gains that I want to give to the elders. With that, Yang Qin waved his hand, and a huge praying mantis corpse appeared in front of everyone. The corpse was preserved abnormally intact, and even a monster core was completely preserved, untouched. If it was not motionless, and there was no aura of a living creature, maybe everyone would think that this was a living monster. "This place is small. I can't put it in," Yang Chun said apologetically. This disciple found more than a dozen corpses of the peak Yuanying stage praying mantis in that secret plane, and they were well preserved. If each of the elders refines a puppet, there will be some guarantee of safety, and at the same time, it can also improve the combat power of Chunyang Palace. From the beginning, when Yang Chun took out the praying mantis corpse, everyone had fallen into a sluggish state. Where was the demeanor of a senior master? Yang Chen's surprise was simply endless. It could really be said that one wave had not yet subsided, and another wave had risen. After the death of the Deshang stage master, he was happy. Suddenly, there was a complete mountain gate, and then there was the inheritance of a martial arts sect. Before everyone could fully digest and absorb it, Kacha, more than a dozen well-preserved corpses of the peak Yuanying stage appeared in front of them, asking everyone to refine a puppet to ensure safety. Even from the time they joined Chunyang Palace to the time they grew up to be elders, these elders present had never been so shocked. If they had to say anything, it was also brought by Yang Chun. Heaven-seizing pill, questioning inner heart pill, 100,000 mountains, which one of them could be separated from Yang Chun? That was the corpse of the peak Yuanying stage monster. The monster core was intact, and the body was complete. It was simply carefully taken care of after a natural death to achieve such a level. Of course, the fact was exactly the same. In that secret plane, the only room without dust was the room where the corpses of these praying mantis were stored. If everyone refined a puppet of the peak Yuanying stage, it would simply double their combat effectiveness in an instant, and it was even more than enough. If they really did this, the high-level combat effectiveness of Chunyang Palace would directly double. What kind of scene would that be? Now, there was only one thought left in everyone's mind. That was Yang Chun still a human? Which of these things could be done by a disciple in the foundation stage? Or to put it another way, in this world, was there anything that Yang Chun couldn't do? Yang Chun, if you say one day that you killed a great principal golden immortal, maybe I will believe it. Wang Yong looked at the corpse of the praying mantis and couldn't help but say with emotion, "That's not for sure." On Yang Chen's face, there was suddenly an inscrutable smile. Chapter 525. No one would take Yang Chen's joke seriously. However, Yang Chun said that it was necessary for every elder to refine a puppet. Even as long as it was a master of the Yuanying stage, they could refine one. Originally, there were 8 Yuanying stage ancestors in Chunyang Palace. Later, Lin Yinfeng died, but Zhu Chantao was added, so there were still 8. At this time, the head of the palace was not polite to Yang Chun and directly asked for 8 praying mantis corpses. As for the cultivation method of refining the puppet, Chunyang Palace was not short of these things. Although Shi Kuei and Xiesha were also masters of the Yuanying stage, their cultivation was different from that of the Dao sects. It could only be said that Yang Chun could think of a way. In the blink of an eye, countless things were sent out, but Yang Chun did not feel the slightest distress. This was what Chunyang Palace looked like in his mind, and with the decision of the head of the palace and the elders, the things of Chunyang Palace and Yang Chen's things were not much different. As long as it was useful, he could use it. This kind of treatment, even several elders could not enjoy it, all because their merits were not enough. But Yang Chun was young, but he had already surpassed these elders. What was rare was that no one would have any dissatisfaction with this. After all, Yang Chen's things were really taken out, but no one could erase them. Refining a puppet was not too difficult for a master of the Yuanying stage. Although the corpse of the praying mantis used to be at the peak Yuanying stage, after all, the monster core was still there, which made it easier. In a short period of time, it could double the overall combat effectiveness of the Chunyang Palace's Yuanying stage, which was more important than anything, and even more important than the urgency to go to the Blue Vault Mountain Immortal's cave immediately. Of course, there was one thing that Yang Chun would definitely insist on. At least until his master woke up, Yang Chun would not move. Everyone must have known this, and no one took the initiative to mention this matter. In the end, it was Yang Chun who took the initiative to talk about the situation of the Immortal's cave. Elders, please make some preparations. When the time comes, you can directly collect the cave mansion. You can move it back or put it somewhere else. It's better than staying overseas. As he spoke, Yang Chun handed out a jade slip. It records the collection method of the Blue Vault Mountain Immortal's Cave. For Yang Chun, it was still very difficult for him to collect this cave. His cultivation was not enough to collect such a big cave. However, with the combined strength of several elders of Chunyang Palace, they were able to steadily collect the cave residents. In this way, the Blue Vault Mountain Immortal's Cave will truly be under the control of Chunyang Palace, and Chunyang Palace's disciples will be able to enter the Immortal's Cave more easily. Of course, the disciples who were able to enter the abode were definitely loyal disciples who had passed through numerous tests. Everyone was overjoyed when they heard that they could still retrieve the overseas cave abode and move it back. However, because of this, improving everyone's strength became even more important, and refining puppets had become a top priority. When someone made trouble in the process of collecting it, it would immediately come in handy. The head of the palace and several elders united with several Yuanying stage hall masters and directly retreated to refine the puppets with all their strength. Yang Chun returned to his master's small courtyard. As soon as he entered the courtyard, he saw Gong Sunling in white. As soon as she saw Yang Chun, Gong Sunling's eyes shone brightly. She gritted her teeth and stood up. Suddenly, she couldn't help it anymore. She rushed over and threw herself into Yang Chen's arms. Yang Chen was caught off guard. When Gong Sunling's jade body entered his arms, he felt that it was wrong, but he couldn't push Gong Sunling away at this time. He could only let Gong Sunling hold his neck and cling tightly to his body. Before Yang Chun felt embarrassed, Yang Chun had already heard the cry of Gong Sunling. This time, Yang Chun was more and more at a loss. He didn't know what to do. He could only stand in place and listen to Gong Sunling's cry. After a long time, he remembered to put his hands gently around Gong Sunling's slender waist and gently patted on Gong Sunling's back a few times. "I'm fine." Yang Chen's voice finally stopped Gong Sunling's crying. However, Gong Sunling still held Yang Chun and refused to let go, as if she was afraid that he would disappear from her eyes in the next moment. Yang Chun had to comfort for a long time before he let Gong Sunling let go of him. However, Gong Sunling, who put down her arm, was already blushing at the moment, and she was too shy to look up at Yang Chun. After not seeing for more than 10 years, Gong Sunling had also lost a lot of weight, but her cultivation base had been greatly improved. It must have been a lot of hard work on her daily life. In this situation, even if Yang Chun was stupid, he could see some clues. The beauty was heavy, but Yang Chun did not dare to promise anything. But at this moment, how could Yang Chun say these words? On the contrary, Gong Sunling's haggard appearance also made Yang Chun think of something. He directly took out a cup of 4C's mysterious coral liquid and sent it to Gong Sunling. "Senior sister, drink it." "What's this?" Gong Sunling was really attracted by the purple 4C's mysterious coral liquid and asked in a low voice. "Don't worry about it. It's good to drink it." Yang Chun sent the jade cup with the 4C's mysterious coral liquid to Gong Sunling's cherry mouth and did not say much, just let Gong Sunling drink it. Gong Sunling did not insist anymore. On this hand of Yang Chun, she slowly drank this large cup of 4C's mysterious coral liquid. "Senior sister, in the future, there will be a big thing for me. After you sleep, you don't have to worry about anything." Before Gong Sunling just drank it and fell asleep, Yang Chun said this to Gong Sunling. Listening to Yang Chun's words, Gong Sunling closed her eyes with a smile on her face. Yang Chun, as if he was treating his master, picked her up by the waist and settled Gong Sunling in the guest room next to him. Master and senior sister naturally had their servants to take care of them. This time, the two women would sleep for at least 10 days. After Yang Chun told them, he went straight to the Hall of Eccentrics to find Gue Shanyu, Shikue, and Xiesha. With the help of the questioning inner heart pill, the old tree demon's body has completely absorbed the Penglai divine wood. Now Gue Shanyu was much stronger than before the loss of his clone. However, his aura became more and more peaceful, and he looked like a master. Lan Yan's demon power crystal, Yang Chun temporarily lent it to Gue Shanyu, letting him study it for a while. Although it was not the same, it belonged to the monster bloodline, and Gue Shanyu could still learn a lot from it. Shikue and Xiesha were even simpler. Two beheaded praying mantis corpses, one for each person. Although the body was decapitated, the monster core was complete and was directly stuffed to the two people. The power absorption of the monsters was sometimes easier than that of the Dao sect cultivators. The two guys directly took a bite and swallowed the two huge praying mantis corpses together with a monster core into their abdomen. As long as it was completely digested for a period of time, they could easily obtain the power contained in the monster core. Chapter 5:26. Of course, this method was not unlimited, and it could only be done if the attributes were compatible. Moreover, even if the attributes were compatible, it was impossible to completely absorb the power of the other party's monster core, and there would always be a lot of waste. Fortunately, the praying mantis was also a monster of the earth attribute, and it was the same attribute as Shikue and Xiesha. This was not a big problem. After absorbing the two praying mantis corpses and monster cores, Shikue and Xiesha's cultivation base could increase by a lot. At least they could break through a small level and enter the middle Yuanying stage. This has made the two guys very satisfied. In the barren valley, how long would it take to have such a cultivation base? However, this kind of absorption was not completely without flaws. After all, it was not the power of their own cultivation, and it would take a lot of time to fully adapt. At the same time, it would inevitably bring some impurities in the cultivation base. But now that Yang Chun has the 4C's mysterious coral liquid, he doesn't care about this little defect at all. If it weren't for the fact that the master of the palace and several other Yuanying stage masters of the Chunyang Palace were retreating to refine puppets, Yang Chun would directly put the three masters of the Hall of Eccentrics into a deep sleep. In short, this trip, almost everyone who had a good relationship with Yang Chun had benefits. Yang Chun also tirelessly turned around Du Qian, Shang Wanfeng, Wang Yuan, and his original 4 slaves, all gave each a small cup of 4C's mysterious coral liquid. After watching them take it, he turned back to his master's small courtyard and waited quietly. His master and senior sister have not yet woken up, but there have been a lot of grease and debris on their bodies. Yang Chun did not let the servants disturb the two. He just told them to prepare the things to wash up. While quietly cultivating, Yang Chun waited for his master and senior sister to wake up. Soon, more than 10 days passed in a flash. Gayu snorted on the bed and woke up. Originally, she had been blaming herself and regretting, and Gaoyu's mental state was very poor. After this big sleep, she was full of vitality, and the energetic Gaoyu once again appeared in Yang Chen's eyes. "Master, you're awake." The moment she opened her eyes, she saw Yang Chen's smiling face and heard Yang Chen's happy voice. Gaoyu sat up and was about to speak. Suddenly, she found that her body was really dirty. She frowned and hurriedly drove Yang Chen out, and then ordered her servants to prepare the toiletries. These things had already been prepared by Yang Chun. It didn't take long for Gao Yu to wash up. She didn't care too much. After a hurried tidying up, she appeared in front of Yang Chun. Yang Chun had never seen his master like this after a bath. He couldn't help but stare with his eyes wide open. At this moment, Gao Yu's whole body and mind had been filled with happiness. Yang Chun unexpectedly returned to her side safe and sound. Everything before seemed to be no longer a problem. Although Yang Chen's eyes seemed to be a bit rude, Gao Yu was still full of joy and even gave Yang Chen a slightly coquettish complaining look. In the past, Gao Yu would never make such a look. But now it was completely different. For the first time, Gao Yu discovered that Yang Chun had such an important position in her heart, even more than herself. If it weren't for Yang Chun almost being killed this time, Gao Yu didn't know that it would be like this. But in any case, Galyu is never willing to see such a situation happen again. She pulled Yang Chun and carefully looked up and down twice. Galyu was convinced that Yang Chun was really safe and sound. Her heart was sour, and she almost shed tears again. How did you come back? This was what Galyu was eager to know. Subsequently, Yang Chun told his experience again. Listening to Yang Chun with the master of the late Deshang stage unexpectedly broke into the unknown sea, and also provoked a monster that was about to cross its tribulation and ascend. Galyu was shocked again and again. When she heard the final result, she was relieved. While the two were talking, Gong Sunling also woke up. After that, it was another messy wash-up. No woman wants to appear in front of Yang Chun with a dirty body. Galyu also noticed that Gong Sunling's performance was exactly the same as her own. They were all dirty after a big sleep. She immediately understood that there must be some reason for this. However, Gong Sunling was washing and would come out soon. She was not in a hurry to ask Yang Chun. Since hearing that you were missing, your senior sister Gong Sun has been wearing white clothes. Galyu suddenly said such a sentence, which made Yang Chun stunned. Fairy Sure of the Green Jade, Immortal Island, Fairy Shui of the Blue Cloud Sect, it is said that it is the same. They're all dressed in white, and the two girls are also veiled. Without waiting for Yang Chun to ask what it meant, Galyu had already said some of the news she had heard. What does it mean? Yang Chun felt a little bad in his heart, but he still asked. They're keeping your chastity. Galyu bowed her head slightly, and said with some emotion, white clothes are mourning clothes. This time, Yang Chun thoroughly understood. His mind was blank, and he suddenly didn't know what to say. The three women actually did this, and Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue were all veiled. Obviously, they did not want others to see their faces. This approach made Yang Chun somewhat moved. Yang Chun, how did you come back? Just when Yang Chun was a little moved, Gong Sunling had already finished washing in a hurry and came over directly to ask a question. Yang Chun could only say his own things again, and Gong Sunling also exclaimed again and again. By the way, Yang Chun, what did you give me to drink? How could I sleep and look like that after waking up? Galyu was given the Four Seas mysterious coral liquid by Yang Chun after fainting. But when Gong Sunling was awake, she felt that something was wrong and immediately asked. It's nothing, just some Four Seas mysterious coral liquid. Yang Chun replied lightly. Four Seas mysterious coral liquid. Galyu and Gong Sunling were not the kind of inexperienced people like Sun Qingxue. When they heard the name of the Four Seas mysterious coral liquid, they suddenly exclaimed. Galyu didn't know, but Gong Sunling was clear. That large glass of Four Seas mysterious coral liquid, which was half a gene, was actually given to her to drink? Such a big cup? Gong Sunling's face had already shown a shocked look. Even Galyu could guess from Gong Sunling's expression that she would never drink less than Gong Sunling. Worldly possessions, what is that? Yang Chun looked at the two beautiful faces and the surprised expression on their faces, and his heart suddenly surged with lofty sentiments and ambitions. When Master and Senior Sister want to take a bath with the Four Seas mysterious coral liquid, just come to me. Chapter 5:27. For Yang Chen's words, the two women had been completely speechless. The precious Four Seas mysterious coral liquid was used for bathing? That was something that could only be done by a prodigal son. Don't believe it? But it was clear that the two had drunk a large cup each. They didn't know how much Galyu had, but no one would believe that it was less than Gong Sunling's. In addition to shock, the two women were left sluggish and almost completely unable to accept such a thing. When they thought that they had drunk so much of the Four Seas mysterious coral liquid, the two women couldn't help but be surprised at the same time. After the conditioning of the Four Seas mysterious coral liquid, their future cultivation would definitely surprise them. Although they didn't know how much of the Four Seas mysterious coral liquid Yang Chun had obtained, at this time, the two women also advised Yang Chun to use it carefully. Whether it was a waste or being known by others, it was not a trivial matter. For the Chunyang Palace executives, Yang Chun gave each of them a praying mantis corpse to refine into a puppet. For the people around him, Yang Chun would not be stingy. He took out 2 praying mantis corpses on the spot and told them to put them away and refined them into puppets for self-defense. The two women seemed to have been shocked by a series of shocks. They only knew how to instinctively accept what Yangchen sent, but they didn't know what to say. Next, Gao Yu and Gong Sunling began to talk about what happened when Yangchen was absent. Of course, they were all related to Yangchen. In reality, the Blue Cloud sect felt guilty and gave up 20% of the income of the 100,000 mountains in the next 10 years. Then Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue wore veils and mourning clothes for Yangchen. The most important thing was that after finding out the origin of Luo Yuan, the head of the palace and the elders gritted their teeth and launched an order to exterminate the family. At that time, the masters of the Chunyang Palace came out, and the Luo family was completely wiped out, leaving no trace of bloodline. On that day, Gao Yu Gong Sunling was the one who killed the most people and the most ruthless. What surprised Yangchen was that both Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue had taken part in the extermination operation. The two women had also turned into two female fiends. Just the number of people who had died in their hands was no less than 300. The Luo family was also a slightly famous family that had been developing in a remote area. The entire family had more than 2,000 people, but in that battle they were all killed. The move of Chunyang Palace shocked many sects at that time. Especially after hearing the reason for the fight, many of them started to restrain their own sects and disciples in private. Chunyang Palace dared to offend a master of the late Dashang stage at the risk of extermination, which showed their determination to love their disciples. Unless it was absolutely necessary, it was best not to offend him easily. Yangchen still didn't know this. When he heard these details, he was even more moved. Suddenly, he felt a little sorry for Shi Shanshan. He had given Sun Qingxue, his master and senior apprentice sister, the Four Seas mysterious coral liquid, but Shi Shanshan did not have it. After the matter of the Immortal's cave, Yangchen decided to go to the Green Jade Immortal Island in person and give her a share of the Four Seas mysterious coral liquid. After saying these things, the two women coincidentally asked about Yangchen's future plans. Looking at the cautious posture of the two women, it seemed that they were very concerned about Yangchen's plan. After the head of the palace and the elders have collected the Blue Vault Mountain Immortal's cave, I plan to go to the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect to explain things. Yangchen thought about it and replied, "Then I will come back and concentrate on my cultivation." This time I went out and found out that my cultivation is still too poor. Unconsciously, Yangchen called himself a disciple when facing Gao Yu, and now it has been changed to him. But no one cared. It seemed that it was so natural. This crisis did make Yangchen feel that his cultivation base was insufficient. Not to mention anything else, just encountering a master of the late Dashang stage. There was no other way to protect himself except to run away. Once the other party came up regardless of the situation, Yangchen had no chance at all. Although the Golden Bell's defensive power was strong, it also needed the support of Yangchen's own cultivation base. Relying on passive protection alone, it was still impossible to resist the attack of a master of the Dashang stage. Although the shuttle was fast, if the enemy came up to kill him, there was no way to think about it. There was also a key point. After Yangchen learned about the location of the Demon Continent from Lan Yin, with his cultivation base at the time, he couldn't go to the place where there were many strong people, which was the biggest stimulation. Even if he had the cultivation base of a Jidan stage, Yangchen would dare to go to the Demon Continent. Unfortunately, he was still in the 4th Fire Attribute Foundation stage 8th layer, the 3rd Fire Foundation stage 7th layer, and the others were still in the Middle Foundation stage. These days, his cultivation base had been consolidated enough. Next, Yangchen would go all out to attack the Jidan stage. The same is true for you. Even if there is a Yuanying stage puppet to protect you, at least after the Jidan stage, your safety will have a certain guarantee. For the two women, Yangchen did not have too many requirements for the time being, but the level of the Jidan stage should not be a problem for them. Plus a peak Yuanying stage puppet. As long as they did not provoke any masters of the Dashang stage, there would not be much problem in safety. When the two women listened to Yangchen's words, they looked at each other and said nothing. They just nodded silently. Gong Sunling, next to him, thought of something and suddenly asked, "Don't you refine a puppet? I have a shuttle." Yang Chun smiled and said, "If the other party can't kill me in one move, I can escape. If the other party can kill me in one move, then the result will be the same without a puppet." Of course, Yang Chun had a puppet, and it was a living puppet without a mind, but it was not convenient to tell the two women, so he could only find such an excuse. Gong Sunling's words also made Yang Chun have a plan in his heart. Since he had the appearance pill, he would let Wan Qian and her apprentices all take it and change their appearance, so that even if others saw them, they would not be able to recognize their true faces. This was more secure than wearing a veil. "Okay, I will go into seclusion with you." Gao Yu had no objection to Yang Chen's decision, but she casually said her plan. "Me too." Gong Sunling suddenly became bold on the side and said the same thing that she would not say on ordinary days. Seeing that Yang Chun and Gao Yu's eyes were looking over, Gong Sunling, although feeling shy, still raised her chest and raised her head. "I will not come out until I reach the Jidan stage." On Gao Yu's face, there was a strange smile. She reached out and hugged Gong Sunling, smiled and promised, "Okay, let's do it. I will not come out until I reach the Jidan stage." Yang Chun next to her was completely excluded from the decision-making layer. "Master, senior sister, you refine the puppet first. I will go and explain some things, and then I will go and collect the Immortal's cave at the head of the palace." Yang Chun naturally would not say a word at this time. He just nodded and stood up. "Wait for me to come back." Chapter 528. Du Qian, Shanghai Feng, Wang Yuan, and the four former slaves all drank the Four Seas mysterious coral liquid and should have woken up at this time. This time, Yang Chen did not visit them one by one, but let people invite them to his small courtyard. After drinking the Four Seas mysterious coral liquid, everyone has discovered the changes in their bodies, and everyone is more grateful to Yang Chun. Not enough. It seems that except for Shanghai Feng and He Lian, others are not very clear about what they are drinking. "Yang Chun, what are we drinking?" The relationship between Du Qian and Yang Chun was established when he entered the sect. He was also Yang Chen's senior brother. There was not so much politeness with Yang Chun. When he saw Yang Chun, he asked directly, "A little bit of Four Seas mysterious coral liquid." Yang Chun replied very lightly. Despite guessing the answer, Shangwan Feng and He Lian still exclaimed out loud. Others were not knowledgeable in this regard and did not feel anything. When they heard the exclamation of the two, they felt that something was wrong and hurriedly asked the two what it was. After hearing He Lian's answer, the group of people fell directly into a dumbfounded state. This kind of precious thing, whether it is used for alchemy or refining, it is the best product that makes people fight for it. And it was actually drunk by them? These have some small benefits for the body, and it will also help everyone's future cultivation. Yang Chen's face still had that kind of understatement smile, as if he had just done something trivial. "I don't have many friends. Of course, I have to think of everyone if there are any benefits." These few people in front of him, when dealing with the Luo family, were the most powerful ones. Yang Chen certainly would not care about them. Even if Yang Chen said so, everyone felt that this gift was too heavy. They all wanted to thank him, but they were stopped by Yang Chen. "You can seem to seek justice for me. What are some worldly possessions?" Yang Chen waved his hand directly. "No matter what, everyone should improve their cultivation first. Senior brother Du, are you going to condense your course soon?" Du Qian nodded. "I didn't have much confidence at first, but now with you, there's definitely no problem." In a simple meeting, Yang Chen did not reveal much, just told everyone to practice more in the near future. Everyone also understood something, and no one asked much. After saying goodbye to Yang Chen, they returned to their own residences and began to retreat. Next, Yang Chen went to the current Fierce Yang Hall, Master Qiaoming. The Fierce Yang Hall was now declining. Qiaoming did not support Yang Chen in many things, but he also gave a lot of care. There are benefits. Yang Chen did not forget to give them to his hallmaster. Qiaoming also obtained the corpse of a big praying mantis, which made Qiaoming pleasantly surprised. In particular, Yang Chen directly gave Qiaoming 2 thunder pomegranates, so that one day, when Xiao Ming formed his nascent soul and crossed the thunder tribulation, if he was not sure, he could use it to absorb the thunder tribulation, which made Xiao Ming overjoyed. In particular, Xiao Ming, who was not very good among the hall masters, almost had an indescribable self-confidence in an instant. Xiao Ming, who was not very good among the hall masters, almost had an indescribable self-confidence in an instant. The confidence of the foundation was a precursor to the rapid progress of the cultivation base. 15 praying mantis corpses, the Yuanying stage masters refined 8, Shikuei and Xiesha 8-2. Gao Yu and Gong Sunling took 2, Xiaoming had 1, and there were 2 left. Su Qingxin, the hall master of the Foreign Affairs Hall, was also a person who supported Yang Chun. Yang Chun also treated him equally and went directly to Hall Master Su, and then sent a praying mantis corpse and 2 thunder pomegranates. While Su Qingxin was overjoyed, he was naturally grateful to Yang Chun, and, at the same time, his confidence was doubled. The remaining praying mantis corpse, Yang Chun thought about it and decided to keep it first. When he went to see Shi Shanshan, he would see if she wanted it. The movements of the palace master and several elders were very fast, and it only took a month for the process of refining the puppet to be completed. After all, the Yuanying stage masters were Yuanying stage masters. In many cases, they had natural advantages over the foundation stage and the Jedon stage. Palace master. This disciple forgot to report one thing. Before summoning Yang Chun and everyone to prepare for departure, Yang Chun seemed to be very embarrassed and said to the palace master. The head of the palace had already glared at them, and several other elders wanted to laugh but held back. It was Yang Chen's current performance that was too embarrassing. This disciple accidentally got some distiller's yeast and made some fine wine, called Jade Dragon wine. Yang Chun took out hundreds of wine jars from the Chinquan bag and placed them on the ground in the hall. On the way to being chased by Luo Yuan, Yang Chun did not dare to concentrate on his cultivation, but sitting in the shuttle, there was nothing else to do. He naturally used the brewing utensils and raw materials bought from the Blue Cloud sect, using the vein of Spirit Spring, and began to brew the auxiliary wine. Anyway, the process of brewing wine was not afraid of being interrupted by Luo Yuan. It was not comparable to cultivation. Yang Chun brewed tens of thousands of pounds along the way. Up to now, it was almost 7 or 8 years old, and the worst was 5 or 6 years old. If it was drunk alone, it was definitely not enough, but it was more than enough to blend the distiller's yeast. Next, Yang Chun also said his agreement with Jiu Xian. When he said it, he was still thinking that Jiu Xian only had a few hundred pounds of Jade Dragon wine. In more than 10 years, it was estimated that it had already been consumed. If he was addicted, he really didn't know how to solve it. The news of the wine Immortal house, the palace master, and a group of elders were of course clear. However, the timely news of the wine Immortal house was not cheap, and it was not a small price to pay. Now that they heard that Yang Chun only used some wine to reach an agreement with Jiu Xian, several high-level officials couldn't help but be surprised and mixed with an expression of not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Of course, there were benefits to cooperating with the wine Immortal house. There was no doubt about this. This matter, for everyone, was also a small surprise. It was just that everyone had some feelings that they didn't know what to say about Yang Chen's good luck. Casually getting something by chance, it was not a sect immortal's cave, it was a secret key, or it was a peerless wine that made Jiu Xian salivate. Walska people say, of course, no one was jealous. The key to the secret plane, Jiu Xian had been holding it for many years and did not know that it was the key to the secret plane. When it came to the hands of Yang Chun, he immediately recognized it. This was not luck, this was a super insight. Yang Chen's reputation for reading a lot of books had been thoroughly established, and almost everything could be explained by this. Of course, this opportunity would not be wasted by the palace master Zhang Jiao, and he immediately found the Foreign Affairs Hall master Su Qingxin to be responsible for this matter. Chunyang Palace, because of the return of Yang Chun, was a scene of prosperity. Several high-level Yuanying stage masters were ready to go to sea to collect the Blue Vault Mountain Immortal's Cave. Chapter 529. To be on the safe side, This trip even took the body of the old tree demon to ensure that when collecting the Blue Vault Mountain Immortal's Cave, it would not be disturbed and obstructed. If necessary, Chunyang Palace did not mind showing the determination of Chunyang Palace again. Everyone took Yang Chen's shuttle. They knew that Yang Chen's shuttle was fast, but no one had ever seen this kind of flying magic weapon that was faster than everyone's flying sword. Fortunately, Yang Chen's shuttle was big enough to accommodate so many people. When the sea was close to the Blue Vault Mountain, the 8 Yuanying stage masters plus the 8 puppet mantises of the peak Yuanying stage directly caused all the monsters above the Jiedan stage within 1,000 miles of the sea to suffer. The masters of Chunyang Palace did not discriminate at all. As long as the monsters above the level appeared in this range, they would all be regarded as enemies that might obstruct the collection of the Immortal's Cave, and all of them would be killed without exception. At the same time, it was also a process for the elders and their respective monsters to adapt to each other. After the surrounding monsters were eliminated, everyone gathered on the island where the Blue Vault Mountain Immortal's Cave was located, waiting for Yang Chun to open the Immortal's Cave. Although they had heard Yang Chun talk about the situation of the Blue Vault Mountain Immortal's Cave, when everyone actually entered the Blue Vault Mountain Immortal's Cave, they were completely shocked by this complete grotto heaven. The unbelievably abundant spiritual power, the large space, the strict classification, the surrounding monsters, the clear safety zone, the fully functional buildings of the sect, everything showed that this was a perfect sect Immortal's Cave. The scale alone was more than 10 times larger than the current scope of Meiqing Mountain, and it was still a separate area. If added up, it was enough to have dozens of Meiqing mountains in the line of defense. With such a grotto heaven, even if the scale of Chunyang Palace was now expanded by 10 times, it was still more than enough. The powerful protective array around the Immortal's Cave was several times stronger than the mountain guarding array of Meiqing Mountain. The spiritual power expenditure of the protective array alone was enough to match the spiritual veins of the entire Meiqing Mountain. The two sides were not at the same level at all. Even if there was another explosion of dozens of Gui water Yin thunders like Liang Xiaoming, it would never be able to damage the cave at all. In order to test it out, before entering, Yang Chun even had Gui Shanyu attack the cave with all his might. However, the cave did not change at all. It was clear how strong the defenses were. This time, with the presence of the old tree demon, someone finally entered the gate of the Deshang stage. What surprised everyone was that a large number of jade slips were also found in the palace of the Deshang stage master. These jade slips were directly handed over to Yang Chun. After he read them first, they were classified into categories and placed in the Sutras Depository of Chunyang Palace. Some important books, such as the Yellow Turban Strongman Body Refining Technique, were even included in the secret pavilion. After a simple visit to the Immortal's Cave, in addition to Yang Chun and the old tree demon, led by the head of the palace, everyone began to work together to collect the Blue Vault Mountain Immortal's Cave according to the method recorded on Yang Chen's jade slip. The Immortal's Cave was a magic weapon of the Grotto Heaven level. As long as there was a strong strength and the correct method, it could be collected. But even so, the process of collection lasted for a full 3 months before it was finally completed. It was just that in the process of this trip of collection, when all the 8 Yuanying stage masters were completed, they all noticed the improvement of their cultivation base. A magic weapon of the Grotto Heaven level was collected and distributed among the 8 Yuanying stage masters. If it was given to one person, it might be possible to directly promote Zhu Chuntao, who had the lowest cultivation base and the shortest time to the Yuanying stage, to the peak Yuanying stage. This improvement alone had collectively raised the top level of the Chunyang Palace to a small level. Wang Yong, who had the strongest cultivation base, had even reached the limit of the peak. As long as the time was right, he could rush into the Deshang stage. The group of people once again took Yang Chen's shuttle back to Meiqing Mountain. But this time, in addition to the masters of the Yuanying stage in the Chunyang Palace and the old tree demon, the disciples of the lower generation, that is, Yang Chun and Gao Yu Gong Sunling, who had been to the Blue Vault Mountain Immortal's Cave, knew. Although there was no exclusive cultivation place for the time being for Gao Yu and Gong Sunling, It seemed that Yang Chun was enough. Moreover, they could still ask the head of the palace to allow them to enter the Immortal's cave to cultivate at any time. Yang Chen also agreed with the head of the palace that all the magic weapon fragments found in the Immortal's cave would be handed over to him. Those were the most suitable food sources for Shao Tian at present. The existence of the Immortal's cave was the top secret of the Chunyang Palace for the time being, and the entrance was in the hands of the head of the palace. If something happened to the head of the palace, Wang Yong would be responsible for controlling it. Next, the Chunyang Palace would establish a set of perfect rules to screen the loyalty of the disciples. Only those who were extremely loyal would have the opportunity to enter the Immortal's cave to cultivate. Of course, it would be claimed that this was a branch of the Chunyang Palace Secret Pavilion, and other sect members would never see the flaws. After all, the secret pavilion of a sect was the top secret. Except for the successive headmasters, other people could not know the whole picture. When he returned to Meiqing Mountain, Su Qingxin had already contacted the Drunken Immortal House. What surprised him was that when he just told the Drunken Immortal House in the market that the Chunyang Palace had prepared the Jade Dragon wine, less than half a month later, Senior Jiuxian rushed to Meiqing Mountain. He didn't know where he came from. The Drunken Immortal almost didn't want to provide the news of another kind of fire that Yang Chen wanted, the evil spirit fire, and directly exchanged it for 400 pounds of Jade Dragon wine, and then drank it on the spot. The intoxicating taste was simply unbelievable. This was an ancestor of the Yuanying stage. The establishment of the cooperation was very smooth. After drinking the Jade Dragon wine brewed by Yang Chen himself, Senior Jiuxian could no longer tolerate the inferior wine he had drunk before. He was tied to the pirate ship by Yang Chen. The scene made Su Qingxin, the head of the Foreign Affairs Hall, feel sad and pitiful. The cooperation between the Drunken Immortal House and other sect families had never been so cheap, so that Su Qingxin, who knew the rules of the Drunken Immortal House, couldn't even believe that the conditions of cooperation were so simple. Using the news in exchange for the Jade Dragon wine? If he hadn't dealt with Jiuxian before, he might have suspected that this Jiuxian was a fake. Finally, Su Qingxin knew the depth and did not take the initiative to try the Jade Dragon wine. Otherwise, if he was addicted to it like Jiuxian, it would be a big trouble. At this point, for the time being, there was not much that Yang Chen could do for the Chunyang Palace. Yang Chen also reported his recent plans to the head of the palace. After visiting Fairy Shi and Fairy Shui, he retreated with his master and senior sister. Chapter 530. The attitude of the Chunyang Palace's top management towards Yang Chen was that as long as it did not involve Yang Chen's safety, it would be approved without asking the reason. Hearing that Yang Chen was just visiting the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect, the head of the palace didn't say anything and wave his hand, bring Shi Kuei and Xie Sha. Go early and come back early. It was so refreshing that it made people speechless. When Yang Chen returned from overseas, it was necessary to explain the misunderstanding to the Blue Cloud sect, so as not to let the Blue Cloud sect have any unnecessary associations. Therefore, Yang Chen's first stop was the Blue Cloud sect. Because the previous acquisition of the Immortal's Cave was confidential, the news of Yang Chen's return was strictly blocked inside the Chunyang Palace. After the elimination of Liang Xiaoming and a group of traitors, in the recent period, the sect's control of the disciples had reached a new height. Almost all the disciples who had seen Yang Chen in the sect were told to block the news of Yang Chen's return. The Blue Cloud sect naturally could not know too much detailed news. When Yang Chen appeared at the Blue Cloud sect's mountain gate and reported his name, the new reception disciples who had not seen Yang Chen had an expression of seeing a ghost. It was under the reminder of Yang Chen that they remembered to report to the sect. Yang Chen was a VIP of the Blue Cloud sect, so naturally he did not have to wait for the notification to go in. Yang Chen was not polite and went straight to the residence of Sun Qingxue. When Sun Qingxue received the news, Yang Chen had already appeared in front of her. Big Brother Yang. The instant she saw Yang Chen, Sun Qingxue was instantly unable to control her emotions. Without even thinking, she threw herself into Yang Chen's arms and burst into tears, just like Gong Sunling at that time. Sun Qingxue, who wore a veil and white mourning clothes, had also made a name for herself in recent years. Her ruthlessness and mercilessness towards the men who harassed her earned her the nickname Snow Fairy. The little girl must have felt that she was a burden to Yangchen at that time, so she put in a lot of effort and went all out to kill, which was why she was so strong. However, the situation at that time had nothing to do with Sun Qingxue. It was just that the little girl thought that the sect could not stop the late Deshang stage Luo Yuan for Yangchen, so the little girl blamed herself. In fact, at that time, Sun Qingxue was put in a coma by Yangchen. How could she let Yangchen down? The practice of covering her face with mourning clothes made Yangchen particularly moved. Therefore, Yangchen also took the initiative to gently embrace Sun Qingxue's waist and softly comforted her. After a long time, Sun Qingxue calmed down. After Sun Qingxue stabilized her emotions, she was stunned to find that her master and the sect master had already come to her and were smiling at her, and Yangchen not far away. The little girl could no longer suppress her shyness and turned and fled back to the house. Sect Master Lu of the Blue Cloud sect received the news and rushed over. First, he was shocked how Yangchen escaped from Luo Yuan. Second, he wanted to completely eliminate the misunderstanding between the Blue Cloud sect and Yangchen and Chunyang Palace. At that time, Yangchen just came over quickly and put Sun Qingxue down without saying anything. The people of the Blue Cloud sect did not know what happened. Luo Yuan broke the two mountain protection formations, only leaving a name. When he saw Yangchen escape, he immediately chased after him. His speed was unparalleled. Even if the Blue Cloud sect wanted to do something with the speed of several masters present at that time, they could not catch up. It was not that the Blue Cloud sect did not do anything. Yangchen certainly knew the situation at that time. In fact, if it were not for Sun Qingxue, Yangchen would not have led Luo Yuan to the Blue Cloud sect. His original intention at that time was the safety of Sun Qingxue, not to lead a strong enemy to the Blue Cloud sect to kill him. Moreover, in the position of the Blue Cloud sect, there was no obligation to stand up for Yangchen in that situation. After all, he was not a disciple of the sect. Neither side had the idea of taking the opportunity to make trouble, so naturally the communication was very harmonious. Moreover, the Blue Cloud sect's practice of compensating Chunyang Palace afterwards was also very appropriate. It fully expressed their apology for not being able to hold Yangchen in the situation at that time. Soon, Yangchen reached an understanding with the Blue Cloud sect on behalf of Chunyang Palace. Next, it was naturally Sun Qingxue who asked Yangchen about the situation at the time. Sect Master Lu and Elder Hua Wanting were also curious. How did a younger generation disciple of the Foundation stage escape from the pursuit of a master of the late Deshang stage? In their minds, it seemed that there was only one possibility. That was Yangchen surrendered and Luo Yuan was magnanimous. That's all. There was nothing else. When Yangchen told his own situation at the time, everyone was stunned. Yangchen actually relied on a flying magic weapon to lead a master of the late Deshang stage to a monster who was about to cross his tribulation, causing the two sides to fight, and then he quietly escaped. Such a move was simply incredible. Of course, Yangchen did not say too much about Lanning. He just said that after the two sides fought, he did not pay attention to him, a small shrimp, and escaped smoothly. But even so, it was enough to cause shock to Sect Master Lu and Elder Hua. The Foundation stage disciples of their sect were not as heaven-defying as Yangchen. Since Yangchen returned safely, Sun Qingxue also removed her veil and no longer appeared in white clothes. Yangchen did not hide his plans in front of Sect Master Lu and Elder Hua. He was only waiting to go back to retreat and attack the Jidan stage. Big Brother Yang, when you reach the Jidan stage, I will also achieve the Jidan stage. After more than 10 years of tempering, coupled with the effect of the 4 C's mysterious coral liquid, Sun Qingxue's cultivation base had grown amazingly. Hearing that Yangchen was going to retreat, she immediately expressed her willingness to follow Yangchen's cultivation base. Sect Master Lu and Elder Hua watched Yangchen and Sun Qingxue's cultivation base was the same And even Elder Hua said that during this time, he would also vigorously guide Sun Qingxue. This meeting completely eliminated the possible cracks between Chunyang Palace and Blue Cloud sect, and both sides were happy. The sect was happy, Yang Chun was happy, and Sun Qingxue was even happier. There was no more perfect result than this. Let's go and see Sister Shanshan. When Yang Chun was about to leave, it was unexpected that Sun Qingxue actually persuaded Yang Chun to go and see Shi Shanshan. After Sister Shanshan heard about your affairs, she was very sad. On the same day, she covered her face with a veil for you. It's the first time I've seen Sister Shanshan cry. Shi Shanshan actually cried for him? In Yang Chen's heart, there were all kinds of feelings, and he didn't know how to express his feelings. However, he had planned to go and see Shi Shanshan. This trip would not be less. Whether it was Sun Qingxue or Shi Shanshan or even Gong Sunling, Yang Chun found that he couldn't refuse them, which made Yang Chun very confused and didn't know what to do. In his mind, the figure brewing tea on the shuttle suddenly became clear, and it seemed that he couldn't get rid of it. Chapter 531. On the way to the Green Jade Immortal Island, Yang Chun carefully selected a batch of tea trees from the medicine garden, and then picked the most tender leaves, carefully fried them in the profound spirit furnace, made a jade pot, and stored them in it. This was what Shi Shanshan liked, and Yang Chun made it without thinking. Exactly the same as the reaction of the Blue Cloud sect after hearing the name of Yang Chun. The disciples of the Mountain Gate looked like they had seen a ghost, which made Yang Chun feel funny. Yang Chun and Shi Shanshan were regarded as an open Tao companion relationship. Therefore, Yang Chun could also go straight to Shi Shanshan's residence without Shi Shanshan coming out to greet him. Relatively speaking, Shi Shanshan in the Jidan realm was more able to control her emotions than Gong Sunling and Sun Qingxue in the foundation stage. The moment she saw Yang Chun, Shi Shanshan's eyes just lit up, and then, as if nothing had happened, she casually took off the veil on her face, and then calmly welcomed Yang Chun into her living room. Although Shi Shanshan's concealment was very good, Yang Chun still found the clues from the flash of her eyes. However, Yang Chun did not say it, but calmly followed Shi Shanshan into the room and sat down. Shi Shanshan was equally curious about Yang Chun's ability to survive, but she was not as eager as Sun Qingxue. But when Yang Chun talked about the thrilling place, Shi Shanshan couldn't help but hold her breath. When he talked about the final escape, Shi Shanshan unconsciously breathed a sigh of relief. I found something in that sea. Let me give it to you to taste. Yang Chun would not favor one over the other. He also took out a large cup of the Four Seas mysterious coral liquid and sent it to Shi Shanshan. This is Four Seas mysterious coral liquid? As a Jidan Supreme Master, Shi Shanshan was obviously more knowledgeable than Sun Qingxue. She recognized the thing in the jade cup at a glance. Even if Shi Shanshan's cultivation was good, looking at this large cup of the Four Seas mysterious coral liquid, she could not help but be shocked. The cup in front of him was comparable to the entire wealth of some small sections. It could be said to be precious. Don't worry about worldly possessions. Yang Chun smiled and said, "This is for you to drink, not for you to be filial to your master. I'm sure you know that some things are more troublesome." The trouble that Yang Chun mentioned was something that Shi Shanshan had told him last time. It was nothing more than a conflict between the sect and one's personal opinion. Once something was too precious, it would cause the sect to covet it, which would lead to more trouble. So far, Shi Shanshan's 10,000 years elixirs were still planted in Yang Chen's medicine garden. At this point, Shi Shanshan herself was also very clear. Looking at Yang Chen's eager eyes, Shi Shanshan's heart moved, and she didn't say much. She just nodded and said, "I will find time to drink it." With Shi Shanshan's character, Yang Chun still knew a little bit. She was absolutely a man of her word. Otherwise, she would not have determined that she was Yang Chen's people because of sentence at that time. Since Shi Shanshan said that she would drink it, Yang Chun certainly believed it. Now that the two were talking, it seemed inappropriate to drink the Four Seas mysterious coral liquid. This is a complete Yuanying stage monster's body found in a secret plane, Yang Chan said, and took out the body of the last big praying mantis. Refine a puppet. It can be used for self-defense on weekdays. Looking at the body of this powerful Yuanying stage monster, Shi Shanshan did not show a surprised look, but turned her head and asked, "Did you find it with little Shui?" Yang Chun did not hide it and nodded directly. Things were so big that it was impossible for Yang Chun to hide it. Moreover, Yang Chun did not think about deceiving Shi Shanshan. "You give it to me? Don't leave it to the sect." Shi Shanshan looked at Yang Chun unexpectedly, seemingly surprised by his attitude towards the sect. "The sect has left enough. This is specially for you." Yang Chun smiled and did not explain too much, but simply said, "Thank you." The feeling that Shi Shanshan gave people at the moment was always faint. Even "thank you." She was very polite. Fortunately, the words were not so enthusiastic, but she still accepted Yang Chen's kindness. In this regard, Yang Chen did not care too much. In the end, Yang Chen still took out the tea he carefully baked on the road and sent it to Shi Shanshan. "This should be the taste you like, but is more refined than last time." This time, Shi Shanshan's performance was no longer so dull, and a happy look appeared on her face. It seemed that this pot of tea made her more moved than the four seas mysterious coral liquid and the body of the Yuanying stage monster. At first, Yang Chun thought that it was Shi Shanshan's preference, so it was like this. But soon he understood that it was not because Shi Shanshan liked this tea that she was happy, but because Yang Chun remembered her preferences and specially prepared something suitable for her taste. This intention was the key to making her happy. Remembering Shi Shanshan's intention even made Shi Shanshan happy than those precious things. After thinking about this, Yang Chun couldn't help but smile bitterly. He still looked at Shi Shanshan too simply. The cold plum fairy who was famous in the three realms in his previous life was not such a vulgar person. Yang Chun took advantage of Shi Shanshan's happiness and asked directly, "Is there any suitable utensils? I got a good spirit spring by chance. Let's try to brew tea." Shi Shanshan's eyes lit up, and she quickly took out her full set of tea sets and took out a wooden bucket. Yang Chun slowly filled the bucket with the spirit spring water. Then, just like on the shuttle, he sat quietly and watched Shi Shanshan start to boil the water. After a while, Yang Chun had a cup of fragrant tea in his hand. After sniffing the fragrant cup carefully, Yang Chun took the teacup and took a sip. The tea this time was indeed more flavorful than the one on the shuttle. The tea was also good, and Yang Chun's baking was also meticulous. Plus, the spirit spring water was indeed more suitable than the steamed seabed spring water. The taste of the boiled tea was more wonderful. In the process of enjoying the tea, the performance of the two seemed to be more tacit than before, and the atmosphere was a lot more harmonious, not the kind of faint courtesy. Although the two were just silently tasting the fragrant tea, the effect was better than talking for a long time. They didn't say much, but it was better than 1,000 words. No one wanted to speak for fear of destroying this rare atmosphere. After Yang Chun drank a small cup, Shi Shanshan diligently refilled Yang Chun's cup. It's just that there's always a time to finish tasting the tea, and the two can't sit together and keep drinking tea. "I plan to go back to seclusion." Putting down the teacup, Yang Chun finally said, "My cultivation is too poor. This time, I will not come out until I reach the core formation stage. I'll wait for you." Shi Shanshan seemed indifferent to Yang Chen's words. However, the few words that came out of her mouth fully expressed her attitude. Chapter 532. Returning from the Green Jade Immortal Island to the Chunyang Palace, Yang Chun finally solved the busy outside affairs, greeted the head of the palace and Wang Yong, and was ready to retreat. Before Yang Chen's retreat, the head of the palace sent a batch of things to Yang Chun, but it was the various levels of fire seeds collected by the Chunyang Palace in the past 10 years. Basically, they were all first-grade to third-grade fire seeds. They were not particularly rare, but the number was really a lot. There were already more than 100 kinds of fire seeds in this batch, plus the last time Yang Chun got. Now Yang Chun had more than 200 kinds of first-grade to third-grade fire seeds. The location of the retreat, Gao Yu and Gong Sunling had already chosen it. It was in the Blue Vault Mountain Immortal's cave. For the time being, only a few of them could come in. Even the elders would not come in to cultivate easily. The spiritual power here was abundant, and it was safe and reliable. There was no place more suitable for retreat than this. It was said that the three of them retreated together, but the cultivation was still their own. Gao Yu and Gong Sunling have already found their own rooms, and they have also chosen a room for Yang Chun. Yang Chun did not go against the good intentions of his master and sister. Under their arrangement, he lived in the selected place. Subsequently, Yang Chun began to consider how to cultivate next in order to get better results. More than 200 low-level flames. Yang Chun must absorb and integrate them. However, before that, he must first absorb these flames into the profound spirit furnace to improve the quality of the profound spirit furnace again. The current profound spirit furnace, absorbing the fire seeds, especially the low-level fire seeds, was very easy. With the increase of the absorption of the fire seeds, the grade of the profound spirit furnace was getting higher and higher, and it was easier to collect the fire seeds. Almost at the speed of one a day, Yang Chun only took more than 200 days to absorb all the low-level fire seeds into the profound spirit furnace. With more than 200 low-level flames, the appearance of the profound spirit furnace has changed again. The pale green, profound spirit furnace began to slowly turn into a pale cyan color. At first glance, it was the color of a flame burning to the extreme. Next, Yang Chun began to control the profound spirit furnace to absorb the extreme earth true fire and pure flame true fire. These two flames were both fifth-grade flames of the same level as the sun true fire and the moon true fire. They could even melt the cyan crystal profound gold when absorbed and greatly improve the grade of the profound spirit furnace. It was estimated that the previous owner of the profound spirit furnace was not like Yang Chun. When he was still in the mortal world, he had almost unlimited absorption of flames. Before and after these flames added up, it was enough to match the performance of the profound spirit furnace in the spiritual world in his previous life. The powerful fire control ability, coupled with the super grade of the profound spirit furnace, made Yang Chun only spend 2 months to easily absorb the polar true fire and the pure flame true fire into the profound spirit furnace. At the same time, the profound spirit furnace, which added 2 small pieces of cyan crystal profound gold, finally began to transform again, becoming as smooth and bright as ceramic. After completing this step, it would take close to a year's time. Next, Yang Chun did not directly absorb the flames to enhance the 3rd fire and 4th fire spirit power, but took out the collected 10th water true essence and began to cultivate the 10th water true secret art. With the secret art and enough 10th water true essence, cultivating the 10th water true secret art was only a matter of time for Yang Chun. In just half a year, Yang Chun easily completed the 10th water true secret art. Yang Chun has cultivated the 5th earth true secret art, the 7th metal true secret art. The earth produces the metal, and the 5th earth produces the 7th metal, which was very natural. It was a pity that although the metal gave birth to water, the 7th metal and the 10th water were 1 yin and 1 yang. For the time being, it did not achieve the perfect effect of the 5 elements. But even so, the 10th water true secret art still easily upgraded the original 10th water spirit power of the 5th layer of the foundation stage to the 7th layer of the foundation stage, and quickly entered the late stage of the foundation stage from the middle stage of the foundation stage. At the same time, because of the accompanying increase effect, the other attributes of spiritual power generally improved by a small level, and the worst also entered the 6th layer of the foundation stage. The 7th metal spirit power directly rushed to the 7th layer of the foundation stage. However, the 3rd fire, 4th fire spirit power was a few levels higher than other spirit powers before. This time, it did not improve too much, but it was upgraded to the peak of its original level, and it was only a step away from entering the next level again. At the moment when the 10th water true secret art was completed, Yang Chun's sea of consciousness began to change as expected. The area directly expanded to 200 acres. However, the original parts did not change. What was added was a sea formed around it, a sea that was completely composed of Gouet water. The long, bloody river was also connected with the small sea formed by the 10th water, but the two sides were well water and river water, and they were clearly separated. One side was bloody, the other side was light blue, and the border was very clear. His spiritual awareness also soared wildly at this moment, and quickly broke through the level of the middle Yuanying stage and entered the realm of the late Yuanying stage. At this point, Yang Qin's Great Yin and Yang 5-element secret art has been successfully completed for 3, and only 7 still need to be supplemented. Next, it should be to absorb those fire seeds and improve the level of the fire attribute spirit power. After the promotion of the realm, Yang Chun did not rush to absorb the flame immediately, but consolidated at the current level for a period of time. During this consolidation time, Yang Chun did not waste it, but began to refine the appearance pill. The appearance pill was for Wan Qian's master and apprentice to use. There were 2 pills left from the last refining, but it was not enough, and he needed to add a few more. The medicinal materials were ready-made, and the profound spirit furnace had just been upgraded to the point where people looked up to it. For Yang Chun, refining the appearance pill had no difficulty at all. So in order to test the profound spirit furnace and his own alchemy level, Yang Chun abruptly refined the appearance pill to the 3rd grade. The triple appearance pill could not only change the appearance, but even the figure and temperament could also be changed. In order to make the people of the Blue Cloud sect no longer recognize Wan Qian's master and apprentice, Yang Qin simply chose a completely opposite temperament. Wan Qian's master and apprentice soon became 6 seductive and charming women after taking the triple appearance pill, and their figures also became abnormally hot, which was completely different from the previous disciples of the famous sections. At first glance, it was easy for people to think that Wan Qian's master and apprentice were the 6 women of the demon sections. And Yang Chun also let Wan Qian's 5 apprentices start to practice a kind of demon Dao formation called the blissful enchantress formation, so that no one could recognize their true identity. After refining the medicinal pills, Yang Chun used his current cultivation base to refine the bright ray sword, the blood demon vine sword, and all the magic weapons that he could refine, all according to the heavenly spirit and earthly fiend sacrificial refining. 2 years passed quickly. His cultivation base was almost consolidated, and Yang Chun finally began to prepare to absorb the newly collected fire seeds. As long as these fire seeds are absorbed and integrated, the fire attribute spiritual power will directly rush to the edge of the condensation core. Chapter 533. Yang Chun was already very experienced in absorbing the fire seeds. Now the flame in Yang Chen's body was a mixture of hundreds of 1st grade, 2nd grade, and 3rd grade flames. It was still a long way from Yang Chen's goal of the yin-yang heaven-burning fire. It was barely regarded as an yin-yang fire. The profound spirit furnace preserved all the fire seeds, which was also an important buffer, so that Yang Chun could absorb these low-level fire seeds more easily. To absorb, of course, it was to start from the simplest and lowest level, gradually integrate, enhance the power of its own yin-yang fire, and then slowly absorb the high-level ones. This was a step-by-step process. The fire seeds that had been absorbed before had laid a solid foundation for Yang Chun, so now Yang Chun had no pressure to absorb them. The 1st grade fire seeds, it only took a few days to absorb and integrate a kind of fire. Every time a kind of flame was integrated, there was a small cluster of flames in Yang Chen's sea of consciousness, and then it was directly attached to the trunk of the Penglai Divine Wood. The 1st grade fire seeds could not cause much change in the sea of consciousness, but also made Yang Chen's spiritual awareness slightly stronger. 1 or 2 may not be seen, but when the total number of 1st grade flames in Yang Chen's sea of consciousness accumulated to 9981, the situation changed qualitatively. This change was not the expansion of the sea of consciousness, but the height of the sea of consciousness had undergone a huge change. It was originally only the height of a polydivyne wood, divided into 2 layers of the sea of consciousness, and now it suddenly became several times thicker and taller. The sky also became more like the sky, with a sense of emptiness. The real shadow of the polydivyne would seem to be affected by this change, jumping several times higher and really becoming a towering divine wood. The spiritual awareness suddenly jumped up a lot and directly broke through the limit of the middle Yuanying stage and entered the late Yuanying stage. The drastic changes in the spiritual awareness even made the entire Immortal's cave shake. This vibration was soon discovered by Gao Yu and Gong Sunling, who were also cultivating. The 2 women no longer cared about their cultivation and quickly rushed to Yang Chen's side. He was relieved to see that Yang Chen was safe and sound. Yang Chen's spiritual sense, which had suddenly strengthened, shook wildly in his sea of consciousness, causing Yang Chen to show signs of losing control. This was something that had never happened in his previous cultivation. However, Yang Chen did not panic. This situation was recorded in the 3 Purities secret art. Speaking of which, this was a sign of his divine sense splitting. Next, as long as his divine sense made some progress, it would immediately split into 2. When the 3 Purities secret art was cultivated to a certain level, such a situation would inevitably occur. As long as the cultivation of the divine sense was 1 or 2 great realms higher than the cultivation of the spiritual power, they would separate. The separate divine senses would grow independently until they reached the level of the 3 pure ones. The 1 Qi turning into 3 pure ones was the initial change. However, it was obviously not the right time for Yang Chen. If their spiritual senses were separated at such an early stage, it would be extremely difficult for the 2 weak spiritual senses to further improve in the future. If he normally cultivated the 3 Purities secret art, such a change would only occur when he reached the celestial immortal level. But no one thought that Yang Chen had integrated the killing intent of the beheading immortal stage and directly transformed it into a spiritual awareness, at least saving Yang Chen hundreds of years of hard work. Moreover, Yang Chen's situation was special. When he had not yet cultivated the spiritual power, he had already begun to cultivate the 3 Purities secret art, which made this situation appear earlier. Now it seemed a little uncontrollable. The violent shock of his spiritual awareness made Yang Chen have to stop all his cultivation. Even if Yang Chen was a reborn great principal golden immortal, it was impossible to control everything in his hands. There would always be such an accident. In front of him was the problem that Yang Chen needed to solve in time. Spiritual awareness double cultivation. In Yang Chen's mind, this was the first thought that came to his mind. The last time he and his master's spiritual awareness double cultivation, not only did he save his weak master, but also directly improved his master's spiritual awareness cultivation base, and also reduced his own spiritual awareness cultivation base. This method seemed to be good. Yang Chen's eyes also shot to his master's face. Looking at Yang Chen staring at herself, Gao Yu's face turned red inexplicably, not knowing what to think of. "Are you okay?" Gong Sunling asked worriedly. Although Yang Chen had stopped cultivating, the shock of his spiritual awareness was obvious, which made Gong Sunling worry. "There's a little problem. I need Master's help to solve it." Yang Chen replied truthfully. Hearing this answer, both women breathed a sigh of relief. As long as it could be solved, it would not be a big problem. Gong Sunling was also very perceptive and quickly retreated. Gao Yu pointed out to Yang Chen. This was a master and disciple teaching, but it was very inconvenient for outsiders to be present. Although Gong Sunling was also a person of Chunyang Palace, after all, she was not a disciple of Gao Yu. Her attributes were different, and there was no point in staying and listening. It was good to know that Yang Chen was fine. "Master, my spiritual awareness is growing too fast, and I can't control it." Yang Chen did not completely hide it from Gao Yu, and directly said part of the situation he was facing. Of course, the 3 Purities secret art, such a heaven-defying thing, Yang Chen would never say it. Even in the face of his master, it was impossible. Gao Yu had experienced a spiritual awareness double cultivation with Yang Chen. When she heard Yang Chen's words, she knew what Yang Chen wanted to do, and her face turned red again. However, despite her shyness, Yang Chen could not control his spiritual awareness, which was a big problem. Gao Yu almost didn't think about it, and pulled Yang Chen over. Then you don't have a hold on. Let's come cultivate your cultivation method. Both of them had cultivated the highest mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra. The last time, it was Yang Chen who took the lead. Gao Yu was seriously injured and unconscious, and Yang Chen had to hold her in his arms and cultivate with his head on the back of Gao Yu's head. This time, Gao Yu was awake and did not need Yang Chen to take care of her. In that posture, in fact, the effect of cultivation was not as good as the two people's foreheads facing each other. However, the two people's foreheads were facing each other, but it was inevitable that there was almost zero distance face-to-face contact. Her own breath could be sprayed on the other's face, and the posture was too ambiguous. Thinking of the indescribable pleasure in the process of cultivating the highest mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra, Gao Yu's face suddenly turned red. Even Yang Chen couldn't help but hesitate for a while. But beside Yang Chen, she felt that Yang Chen's spiritual awareness was constantly fluctuating violently, so that Gao Yu could not be shy and directly press Yang Chen to sit down, and she sat opposite Yang Chen. After assuming a cultivation posture, she leaned over slightly and put her forehead toward Yang Chen. His master's beautiful face was in front of him, and Yang Chen's heart could not help but sway. It was under the urging of Gao Yu that his forehead was pressed together with Gao Yu's. This posture made Yang Chen almost unable to control it. It seemed that as long as his lips moved, he could kiss his master's cherry lips. Chapter 534. Soon, Yang Chen had to quickly enter the state of cultivation. His master had already started. If Yang Chen was half-hearted, he would only hurt the two people. Gao Yu's heart was full of shock. Yang Chen's spiritual awareness was so powerful that she could hardly believe it. The feeling of shock, along with the supreme mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra, was transmitted to her sea of consciousness. The surging feeling almost made Gao Yu unable to concentrate. How could Yang Chen's spiritual awareness be so powerful? This was a doubt that had always lingered in Gao Yu's heart. But since she and Yang Chen's spiritual awareness double cultivation, Gao Yu understood that the supreme mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra was so powerful, and Yang Chen's performance did not seem to be surprising. After all, although this Heart Sutra was a double cultivation method, it could be cultivated by one person on weekdays. Usually, Gao Yu would often cultivate this supreme mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra to exercise her spiritual awareness. At this moment, she was familiar with the double cultivation. Soon, the two of them entered that mysterious state. The spiritual awareness in Yang Chen's sea of consciousness seemed to have suddenly found a place to vent, and rushed madly towards Gao Yu's sea of consciousness. Under the concerted efforts of the two, they soon found a balance and began to calm down. The unspeakable sense of joy soon appeared again. This time the two were united, and this feeling seemed to be more inseparable. The two were immersed in that kind of speechless joy. They had been practicing. No one was willing to stop first, and soon entered the state of forgetting everything. He didn't know how long it took. When the two woke up at the same time and stopped practicing at the same time, Yang Chen realized that this time the spiritual awareness double cultivation was over. Reluctantly separating the two people's foreheads together, Yang Chen still had a lingering aftertaste. On the opposite side, Gao Yu was blushing, and her beautiful, pretty face was almost dripping blood. With her own disciples' spiritual awareness double cultivation, there was such a shameful feeling, it really made Gao Yu ashamed. However, the trouble Yang Chen faced before soon made Gao Yu immediately begin to care about Yang Chen. How are you feeling now? In the process of Gao Yu and Yang Chen's double cultivation, it seemed that Gao Yu did not feel how much Yang Chen's spiritual consciousness had decreased, which was completely different from the last time. I'm fine now, Yang Chen laughed. However, there was a hint of bitterness in his laughter. This time, the spiritual awareness double cultivation. Gao Yu's spiritual awareness was once again improved. It was already at the peak Jidan stage. This time it directly broke through the Yuanying stage and reached the early Yuanying stage. On the other hand, Yang Chen's spiritual awareness did not decrease much. It just returned to the peak of the middle Yuanying stage. Although the problem was temporarily solved, as long as Yang Chen absorbed a certain amount of fire seeds, he would immediately face the same problem. Gao Yu's mind was meticulous, especially in the face of Yang Chen, who she cared about. At a glance, she saw the bitterness of Yang Chen. She couldn't help but frown and ask, is the effect of the double cultivation not as obvious as the first time? Yang Chen nodded slightly and didn't say much. It seems that he can only maintain this for a period of time and fully improve his spiritual power cultivation base. However, even if it is to improve his spiritual power cultivation base, it will inevitably cause the growth of his spiritual awareness. Is this retreat going to fail like this? Gao Yu looked at Yang Chen's face and noticed that he was a little discouraged. She frowned slightly again, but didn't say a word, but she didn't know what she was thinking about. Master's spiritual awareness. Has it reached the Yuanying stage? Yang Chen and Gao Yu double cultivation. He could basically feel the strength of Gao Yu's spiritual awareness and asked aloud. And Gao Yu just checked that she was already in the early Yuanying stage, but she didn't know what Yang Chen meant by asking this. There's a kind of cultivation method here. Master can try to cultivate it. As he spoke, Yang Chen handed over a jade slip, and at the same time, there was also a jade bottle full of runes. 10th water, true, secret art. Gao Yu casually took the jade slip and explored it with her spiritual awareness, and was shocked. This level of cultivation method, of course, Gao Yu had heard of it, but she never had a chance. Yang Chen actually gave it to her. Didn't Yang Chen know that cultivating the 10th water true secret art required the 10th water true essence? Could it be that in that jade bottle was the 10th water true essence? As soon as this idea came out, Gao Yu's heart began to jump. If it was really the 10th water true essence, doesn't it mean that she could already cultivate the 10th water true secret art? Cultivating the 10th water true secret art in the foundation stage. How could Gao Yu not know the benefits? But she still couldn't believe that she would have such an opportunity. Master's spiritual awareness has reached the Yuanying stage, and naturally you can control this 10th water true essence. Yang Chen did not have so much concealment, but went on to say, as long as you cultivate this 10th water true secret art, Master is absolutely sure that you can condense your core within 20 years. The reason why it was given at this time was naturally because Gao Yu's previous spiritual awareness was too low to control the 10th water true essence. Now that she had reached the Yuanying stage, these were no longer problems. Yang Chen certainly had to come up with the best things for his master. Unfortunately, the 9th water true essence was still not known where to find it. It was impossible for Yang Chen to give it to his master. Otherwise, with the 9th water and 10th water cultivation, the yin and yang would complement each other, and the power would be higher. Gao Yu nodded, knowing that Yang Chen was telling the truth. Far beyond the level of her own spiritual awareness cultivation, coupled with the 10th water, true essence 10th water, true secret art, the spiritual power here was sufficient. Achieving the Jidan stage in 20 years was by no means an empty talk. Although her own cultivation was no longer a problem, Gao Yu was still worried about Yang Chen's troubles. The second spiritual awareness double cultivation, the effect was obviously not as good as the first time. In this way, Yang Chen would soon face the same trouble. If she wanted to solve this big trouble for Yang Chen, it seemed that there was no other way. She could only make an idea on Gong Sunling, who was also in seclusion. Thinking of this, a smile suddenly appeared on Gao Yu's face. Gong Sunling also had a good impression of Yang Chen. If she also had spiritual awareness double cultivation with Yang Chen, the first double cultivation, she would definitely be able to solve this trouble for Yang Chen. Although she didn't know if Yang Chen would encounter the same problem in the future, it seemed that Gao Yu had a hunch that as long as Yang Chen's cultivation base reached the Jidan stage, all the problems would be solved. Making up her mind, Gao Yu didn't say much. She just planned how to talk to Gong Sunling about it. It was strange to say that Gao Yu planned this thing herself, but there was no bitterness in her heart. It seemed that as long as it was for Yang Chen, No matter how uncomfortable things made Gao Yu feel, she could tolerate it. She didn't even know when she had such a mentality. She only knew one thing. As long as Yangchun was safe, then everything was fine. Chapter 535. Yangchun has settled his heart. His cultivation base must be improved. Otherwise, there will be a lot of things that can't be dealt with in the foundation stage. As for the problem of spiritual awareness splitting, if the spiritual awareness double cultivation with his master can't be completely solved, Yangchun will go all out and let the spiritual awareness split. At most, it will take a little time to improve in the future. It is not something that can't be solved at all. In cultivation, there is no such thing as smooth sailing, a little more twists and turns, a little more tempering. It is also a sharpening for oneself. There are only benefits and no harm. After figuring it out, Yangchun was not so entangled at the beginning. After sending his master away, Yangchun began to sit down quietly and first check the changes in his sea of consciousness. Speaking of which, the changes brought by this double cultivation to the sea of consciousness were not obvious, but the reduction of the spiritual awareness brought about a certain degree of reduction in the sea of consciousness. This situation is not the first time, and this is not necessarily a bad thing. After this process of shrinking and growing, the degree of conciseness of Yangchun's sea of consciousness will be strengthened, and the higher the degree of condensation of the spiritual awareness, it also means that the quality of the spiritual awareness is higher. Now Yangchun suddenly understands the true role of the highest mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra. In addition to the fact that double cultivation can improve the spiritual awareness cultivation base faster than single cultivation, there is another important aspect, that is, to condense the sea of consciousness and improve the quality of the spiritual awareness. He believes that Gao Yu's spiritual awareness is also very different from before, which is definitely a good thing for Gao Yu. In the future, it seems that it is necessary to carry out this kind of spiritual awareness double cultivation with his master. The wonderful feeling of close contact with his master still makes Yangchun reminisce. After resting for a long time, Yangchun completely came out from that kind of aftertaste. This was the change caused by the absorption of 99 kinds of first-grade fire seeds before and after. Yangchun has at least several times more fire seeds. It is necessary to fuse the flames into the yin-yang heaven-burning fire. This kind of flame that only exists in legends. Almost no one in Yangchun's previous life could collect it all. Even the existence of a powerful person like the Grand Supreme Elderly Lord does not have this legendary flame. Many low-level flame seeds almost didn't exist in the spirit world and immortal world. As long as an ordinary flame seed entered the spirit world and immortal world, the powerful spirit force would cause the flame seed to extinguish. It was impossible to ascend from the mortal world with a low-level fire seed. The contradiction was that almost none of the fire elementalists who could ascend possessed a low-grade fire seed. In the mortal world, there was no one who could fuse all kinds of flames. After ascending, he had the ability but found that there was no fire seed to absorb, which was why the yin-yang heaven-burning fire had never appeared. Yangchun was different. The opportunity of rebirth was unique. He was blessed by the heavens. Even in the mortal world, he already had unparalleled means of controlling fire and could integrate so many low-level flames. This kind of opportunity was simply tailor-made for the yin-yang heaven-burning fire. If Yangchun let it go, then he would be the biggest fool. Yangchun must fuse with these low-level flames on his body. After a few days of simple cultivation, it was regarded as consolidating the results of this double cultivation. After that, Yangchun once again began to absorb the fire seeds. There were still nearly 100 kinds of first-grade fire seeds. This time, the absorption took almost half a year. Another change occurred after the third fire and fourth fire were all full of 81 kinds. The first-grade fire seeds collected before were very average. There were more than 81 kinds of third fire and fourth fire. When Yangchun thoroughly absorbed and integrated, the yin-yang fire finally underwent a qualitative change. The original two flames in the body, a mixed third fire and a mixed fourth fire, were entangled at this moment, like two fire dragons, entangled with each other, forming a very regular double spiral flame. Whether it was the third fire spirit power or the fourth fire spirit power, all began to rise wildly at this moment. The spiritual power of the underground spiritual vein was absorbed into the body by Yang Chen, like a black hole, and began to strengthen the power of the flame. Yang Chen's side exuded a terrifying heat. The double spiral flame, after the nourishment of this spiritual power, instantly changed color. The third fire began to become a gorgeous purple, and the fourth fire became a pure blue, intertwined, and looked particularly eye-catching. Of course, this scene could only be seen by Yang Chen. At this point, the yin-yang heaven-burning fire was really in its embryonic form and had the possibility of developing in the direction of the final great accomplishment. The embryo was formed, and the rest was that Yang Chen would continue to absorb more flames to strengthen the supplement. The third fire spirit power and the fourth fire spirit power were directly promoted here. The third fire spirit power was directly promoted to the 8th layer of the foundation stage, and the fourth fire spirit power even rushed to the 9th layer of the foundation stage, only one step away from reaching the peak of the foundation stage. The other attributes of the spirit power, driven by the improvement of the 2 fire attributes, also began to improve. Except for the 10th water spirit power and the 7th metal spirit power, all the others have been promoted to the level of the 7th layer of the foundation stage. At this point, all of Yang Chen's spiritual power finally stepped into the level of the late stage of the foundation stage. And the 3 kinds of spiritual power, 5th earth, 7th metal, and 10th water, were all the most original spiritual power. The starry flames in the sea of consciousness also fiercely merged, just like the flames in Yang Chen's body, forming a 2-color fire dragon, purple and blue intertwined, entangled in the Penglai divine wood, like a towering pillar with 2 more guardian dragons. The strange thing was that the sea of consciousness did not expand again, but it was further compressed, as if there was a powerful force that compressed the huge sea of consciousness a lot. The space also changed from 200 acres to 150 acres again. The situation that Yang Chen was worried that his spiritual awareness would skyrocket again did not occur, but with the compression of the sea of consciousness, Yang Chen's spiritual awareness was also compressed crazily. The spiritual awareness of the middle Yuanying stage, under this power that Yang Chen could not explain, began to slowly decline until it fell to the early Yuanying stage. Although the cultivation base of the spiritual awareness has been very obvious, Yang Chen did not feel that his strength has declined. Whether it is the range of the sword or the exploration of the spiritual awareness, it has not been reduced, but slightly improved. Originally, Yang Chen could explore the movement within 100 miles when he released his spiritual awareness, but now, Yang Chen felt that he could easily reach about 120 miles. This could only explain one thing: the condensation of the spiritual awareness brought by it was not just a simple drop in the realm of the spiritual awareness. Perhaps this was the effect that he had never seen in the 3 purity secret art. In any case, such a change made Yang Chen very happy. The control of the spiritual awareness has been greatly enhanced, and he has temporarily relieved the worry of the split of his spiritual awareness, which was definitely a good thing. Chapter 536. The spiritual power had almost collectively improved by a small level, and Yang Chen certainly could not be greedy for a quick breakthrough and ignore the consolidation of the realm. Naturally, he could not continue to absorb the fire seed immediately. There were 2 basic effects of consolidating the cultivation base. One was to let his body slowly accept the changes brought about by the improvement of spiritual power. The other was to let himself adapt to the battle and other actions after the improvement of spiritual power. This was to lay the foundation for future continuous improvement. In a short period of time, the continuous improvement of the realm was not a genius, it was a fool. When the body has not adapted to the influence of the improved strength, it will blindly improve to a higher realm. It was okay once or twice, but it also takes a longer time to get used to and adapt. Once such an improvement is carried out continuously, The final result is that after several consecutive improvements, the body can no longer adapt to its own strength. The final result is either an extremely serious injury, or the foundation is destroyed and it can no longer be improved. No matter which result, it was not what Yang Chen wanted. Therefore, Yang Chen could only stop absorbing the flame for the time being and honestly adapt to it every day. Of course, there was a better way. That was to use the spiritual power tirelessly, so that his body could adapt to the changed spiritual power in the process of using it more quickly. Refining the magic weapon was also a good way to use spiritual power. As it happened, there were still a lot of things on Yang Chen's body that needed to be re-refined. Profound Spirit Furnace, Medicine Garden, Dome Hall, Bright Ray Sword, and Blood Phantom Vine Sword all needed to be refined by Yang Chen. The sea-pouring Jasper Cup had just been collected with a unique method. It could only be used simply, and it had not experienced any refining. The Profound Spirit Furnace was the highest-grade magic weapon in Yang Chen's hands. It took Yang Chen half a year to refine the Profound Spirit Furnace to the 6th layer of the Heavenly Spirit Treasure Refining Secret Art and the 8th layer of the Earth Fiend Sacrificial Formation Secret Art. This was also the highest realm that Yang Chen could currently cultivate the Heavenly Spirit Treasure Refining Secret Art and the Earth Fiend Sacrificial Formation Secret Art. Yang Chen had already lit up 140 of the 1,080 spiritual power threads in his body. The increase in the power of spiritual power had reached at least 4 times. In terms of the power of spiritual power alone, he was no longer a master in the early Jidan stage. Next, it was time to refine the herb garden. The grade of the herb garden was very high, so it was very difficult for Yang Chen to refine it. Moreover, this time, Yang Chen was refining the herb garden and the dome together, so the difficulty was even higher. The herb garden and the dome were originally one magical treasure, but after Yang Chen refined them separately, they were no longer coordinated. Of course, Yang Chen would not continue like this, so he would rather spend a great deal of effort to refine the medicine garden and the dome together. For a full 2 years, Yang Chen spent it on the medicine garden's purifying bottle. The Heavenly Spirit Treasure Refining Secret Art for the medicine garden had reached the extreme. With Yang Chen's current cultivation, it was impossible to improve it again. The focus of the refinement this time was still on the Earth Fiend Sacrificial Formation Art. The 2nd layer of the Heavenly Spirit Treasure Refining Secret Art, the 4th layer of the Earth Fiend Sacrificial Formation Art. This was the result of Yang Chen's refining for 2 years. The level of the herb garden and the dome were slightly improved, and the protection of the dome was more excellent. However, what made Yang Chen happy was the changes in the herb garden. The space of the herb garden had once again increased a lot. However, this time the increase was the credit of the 10th water true essence. The increased part was just like Yang Chen's sea of consciousness. There was a circle of blue sea around the land, all of which were the 10th water layer. In this way, some medicinal materials that could grow in the seawater could also be transplanted to the herb garden. This was not enough. The portal that loomed in the herb garden was much clearer this time. He had seen the complete outline, but it was still only visible and could not be touched. It seemed that his cultivation base was not enough. Otherwise, he could enter the deeper portal. He really didn't know how many years of amazing elixirs were behind this portal. The Bright Ray Sword and the Blood Phantom Vine Flying Sword. Yang Chen was strictly refining them according to the highest level of his current Heavenly Spirit Treasure Refining Secret Art and the Earth Fiend Sacrificial Formation Art. These 2 flying swords basically belonged to Yang Chen's refining from the lowest stage, especially the Blood Phantom Vine Flying Sword, which was personally refined by Yang Chen. There was no difficulty in refining the Heavenly Spirit Treasure Refining Secret Art and the Earth Fiend Sacrificial Formation Art. Even so, the 2 flying swords took Yang Chen almost a year to complete. Coupled with the maintenance of the Universe Treasure Raising Secret Art, the 2 flying swords have been upgraded by at least 3 levels compared to the original. Not to mention anything else, just after the refining was completed and thrown to Xiao Tian couldn't wait to bite the Blood Phantom Vine Flying Sword, and then coiled on the Bright Ray Sword and never got up. In the past few years of Yang Qin's retreat, Xiao Tian also consumed a lot of magic weapon fragments collected by Yang Qin. After simply digesting the dragon qi in the Dragon Palace's treasure house and these broken spirits, Xiao Tian's figure looked a little bigger. However, after all, it was still in its infancy, and it was not too shocking. Finally, it was the refining of the sea-pouring jasper cup. After it was completely collected, the sea-pouring jasper cup could also be refined. However, the grade of the sea-pouring jasper cup was still a bit high for Yang Qin, even more than the medicine garden. For a whole year and a half, Yang Qin spent all of it on the sea-pouring jasper cup. Even so, it only referred to the refining of the heavenly spirit first layer and the earth fiend second layer. Although the results did not seem very good, Yang Qin was already very satisfied. Although the refining level of the sea-pouring jasper cup was a bit low, after this refining, it was now easy to use. And in a short period of time, the sea-pouring jasper cup's function may not be used by Yang Qin. At most, it was used to shield the exploration of spiritual awareness. For Yang Qin, it was enough. Just this refining took Yang Qin a full 5 years. The improved spiritual power has been consolidated to the point that it could not be consolidated anymore. At this point, Yang Qin began to continue to absorb the fire seeds. The embryonic form of the yin-yang heaven-burning fire has been formed, and Yang Qin no longer has to worry too much. The remaining first-grade fire seeds were completely atonic for the embryonic form of the yin-yang heaven-burning fire. Yang Qin didn't care about the 3721. According to the order of the third fire and fourth fire, he began to absorb the remaining first-grade fire seeds one by one. This time, the absorption of the first-grade fire seeds, in addition to making the brightness of the yin-yang heaven-burning fire a little higher and the spiritual awareness slightly increased, there was no other change. But even so, after absorbing all the remaining first-grade fire seeds, Yang Qin's spiritual awareness cultivation base was raised to the limit of the early Yuanying stage. The two fire dragons entangled together in the sea of consciousness have become a lot thicker. Even Yang Qin's fire attribute spiritual power has made great progress. Although it has not yet reached the edge of upgrading, Yang Qin has also benefited a lot. All the first-grade fire seeds on his body were all absorbed, and Yang Qin began to take out the second-grade fire seeds, ready to absorb and fuse. Collection. Chapter 537. The yin-yang heaven-burning fire had just been formed, and it was still very fragile. At this time, whether it was used for fighting or for alchemy refining, it was not a good idea. Only when the yin-yang heaven-burning fire grew to a certain point could these tasks be completed. The only way to make the yin-yang heaven-burning fire grow was to swallow other fire seeds. Of course, if the low-level yin-yang heaven-burning fire wanted to swallow the high-level fire seeds, such as the sun-true fire and the moon-true fire, there was only one result. It would be refined by these high-level fire seeds. Therefore, the swallowing could only start from the low-grade fire seeds and slowly strengthen itself. The first-grade fire seed was indeed the best tonic for the yin-yang heaven-burning fire. After absorbing the remaining first-grade fire seeds, the yin-yang heaven-burning fire in Yang Qin's body had begun to slowly become stronger. In Yang Qin's body, there were dozens of second-grade fire seeds and third-grade fire seeds that were fused with the yin-yang heaven-burning fire. All of them had been used as the foundation for the yin-yang heaven-burning fire, which also made Yang Qin's current yin-yang heaven-burning fire much stronger than the ordinary newly formed fire seeds. After swallowing all the first-grade fire seeds, and then absorbing the second-grade fire seeds, naturally there would not be too many obstacles. Now Yang Qin does not have to deliberately control the absorption. All of the yin-yang heaven-burning fire spontaneously completes the whole process. Compared with the previous complete need for Yang Qin's control, it was not a little bit simple. At least Yang Qin does not have to control the flame anymore, for fear that the fusion of the flame will lead to an explosion. All of this, the yin-yang heaven-burning fire has no such worries at all. The characteristics of this flame, in addition to burning the sky, was to swallow. Swallow all kinds of flames, as long as it is within the scope of its grade. Perhaps the primary yin-yang heaven-burning fire composed entirely of the first-grade flame can only automatically absorb the first-grade flame. But as long as it absorbs more than two kinds of second-grade flames, the third fire and fourth fire are complete, the primary yin-yang heaven-burning fire can automatically absorb the second-grade flame. Of course, when Yang Chen absorbs, he also needs to pay a little attention to the balance of yin and yang. The current yin-yang heaven-burning fire, but it includes several kinds of third-grade flames. It is no longer primary, so the second-grade flame is completely automatically absorbing the fusion. The only thing that needs to be controlled by Yang Chen is that the flame in the profound spirit furnace should be cut off at the right time, lest the fire seeds of the profound spirit furnace be completely absorbed. The two fire dragons in Yang Chen's body began to change slowly under Yang Chen's crazy absorption. Every time a flame is absorbed, the color of the fire dragon changed a little. The purple flames became more and more intense, while the green flames became fainter and fainter. Of course, this change was only a trend. A mere second-grade flame, at best, made the primary yin-yang heaven-burning fire no longer so fragile. It was still far from the real change of being reborn. Yang Chen flame yang flame. Yang yang heaven. Yang flame, yang yang burning, fire flame yang yang fire. Even if it yang 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 Chen, everything yang yang flame fire time. Even if everything could be saved, the only thing that couldn't be replaced was time. When a number of second-grade flames exceeded 64, the spiritual power in Yang Chen's body changed again. The fire elemental spiritual energy began to increase again. However, this time, the third fire and fourth fire began to be completely balanced. First of all, the third fire spiritual power reached the ninth layer of the foundation stage. Then, the yin-yang heaven-burning fire seemed to have stepped on another level of change, and the two spiritual powers of the third fire and fourth fire began to improve again. The two fire dragons of yin-yang heaven-burning fire, compared to the original prototype, were much more vivid, more like dragons, and even Yang Chen could barely distinguish which was the head and which was the tail. What surprised Yang Chen was that he thought that the yin-yang heaven-burning fire was the two fire dragon heads against each other. Now he found that this was not the case at all. The purple fire dragon and the cyan fire dragon were connected head to tail, and each head touched the other's tail and entangled together. The third fire spiritual power and the fourth fire spiritual power, under the crazy roll of the two fire dragons, were like boiling, flowing in the meridians of Yang Chen, climbing. It seemed that in just a short moment, Yang Chen's two spiritual powers were collectively pushed to the 10th layer of the foundation stage. This was already the peak of the foundation stage. Only one step away, he could step into the Jidan stage. The other spiritual powers, driven by the fire attribute spiritual power, also began to improve in a related way. The 7th layer of the foundation stage collectively upgraded to the 8th layer of the foundation stage before it stopped steadily. The change of the yin-yang heaven-burning fire and the improvement of spiritual power inevitably brought about changes in the sea of consciousness. As if it was echoing with the two fire dragons in Yang Chen's body, the two fire dragons in the sea of consciousness also became a lot clearer. The only difference from Yang Chen's body was that the two fire dragons in the sea of consciousness were coiled around a towering pillar of the Penlai Divine Wood. The two fire dragons directly turned the Penlai Divine Wood into a pillar of fire with two colors. As expected, the spiritual awareness once again skyrocketed from the early Yuanying stage, directly rushed to the apex of the middle Yuanying stage. Just stopped at this point. There was no step forward, otherwise Yang Chen would have to face the dilemma of the split spiritual awareness again. It was a close call. Yang Chen also secretly wiped the cold sweat on his head. Fortunately, it stopped at this point. If it went further, it would be troublesome. Now this point was just right. The next time Yang Chen was promoted to the Jidan stage, maybe it would be able to solve a big problem. With a long sigh, Yang Chen stopped cultivating. This time, the Yin-Yang 5-element secret art collectively upgraded a level, although it was only a short period of half a year, but then Yang Chen had to stop again to consolidate his cultivation base. This was a step that could not be omitted. if Yang Chun wanted to have long-term development in the future. Originally, according to the ordinary cultivation method, it was impossible for Yang Chun to have such a fast speed of improvement. However, in this life, Yang Chun's super ability to control the fire gave him such a way of promotion that was almost like cheating. Usually, even if it was a fire cultivator like Yang Chun, at most, they could only absorb one kind of fire seed, like Yang Chun's crazy absorption of hundreds of kind of fire seeds. It was unique. It could be said that there was no one before and no one after. No one could be faster than Yang Chun's cultivation method. Although Gao Yugong Sunling claimed to be in retreat, in fact, it was a completely different method. In addition to the closed-door cultivation in this place full of spiritual power, the way they consolidated their cultivation was to go out and fight with the monsters. But Yang Chun and these low-level monsters, for Yang Chun, there was not much experience to be gained. Therefore, Yang Chun's way of consolidating his cultivation base returned to the aspect that Yang Chun was good at. This time, Yang Chun chose to refine a great Yin-Yang 5 elements flying sword for himself, the first wood flying sword. Chapter 538. The Great Yin in Yang 5 Elements Flying Sword. Yang Chun already had two. One was the Binghua Flying Sword Bright Ray Sword. The other was the second wood flying sword Blood Demon Vine Sword. Now Yang Chun was going to start the refining of the first wood flying sword. For refining the first wood flying sword, there was no more suitable material than the Penglai Divine Wood. This was something that Yang Chun had already decided after he got the Penglai Divine Wood. However, at that time, Yang Chun's cultivation base was low, and the Penglai Divine Wood had just been transplanted into the medicine garden, and it had not yet fully matured, so it had not been carried out. Now, the Penglai Divine Wood was growing very well under the nourishment of the medicine garden, and after the indirect nourishment of the thunder pomegranate, it was even more verdant. The old tree, Demon Gue Shanyu, just absorbed a Penglai Divine Wood and his cultivation base sword. Up to now, Yang Chun could not judge whether the old tree demon's cultivation base had reached the middle Deshang stage or higher. Among the fully mature Penglai Divine Wood forests, one was the thickest, which was carefully selected by Yang Chun and nourished with the first with spirit power and the fifth earth spirit power. It was also the main material chosen by Yang Chun for his own first wood flying sword. A complete Penglai Divine Wood was dug up by Yang Chun, and all the side branches and leaves were carefully treated by Yang Chun, leaving only the straight branches and the thick taproot. Like the Blood Demon Vine Flying Sword, the Penglai Divine Wood Flying Sword also needed to use the main root of the Divine Wood. In fact, the Wood Flying Sword was the best way to deal with it. Retaining the main root would preserve the possibility of future growth of the Wood Flying Sword, and it was also the key to the future upgrade of the Flying Sword. Few people would be so extravagant to use a whole Penglai Divine Wood to refine a flying sword. Not that they did not want to, but they could not. The preciousness of the Penglai Divine Wood, even in the spiritual world, was also amazing. The long branches and the main root were at least 100 feet long and as thick as two people. However, Yang Chun acted as if he didn't see the length of the tree. Both his hands began to cast one spell after another towards the giant tree in front of him. In each secret technique, there was a powerful first with spirit power. Every spell seal that hit the huge tree trunk seemed to make the huge branch shrink a little. During this process, Yang Chun was unusually careful and painstaking. With his current cultivation base, even every time he made a secret technique, the first with spirit power of his whole body would be emptied. Yang Chun had no choice but to rely on his powerful recovery ability and the rich spiritual energy underground to barely survive. This magic art contained at least dozens of miniature formations. Fortunately, Yang Chun had the powerful divine sense of the intermediate stage of the original level. His divine sense was also extremely condensed, which was why he could complete such a difficult spell. Hundreds of completely different techniques were used, and the huge Penglai Divine Wood's trunk had shrunk to almost double. But for Yang Chun, it was still a behemoth. The later secret techniques seemed to be more responsible and more energy-consuming. Every time he played one, Yang Chun had to rest for a long time. Restoring the spirit power was one thing, and even the spiritual awareness had to rely on the three purities secret art to recover once before it could continue. To refine, the huge Panlai Divine would shrunk into the size of an ordinary flying sword. Just this step would take a lot of effort from Yang Chun. Seeing the huge Panlai Divine would getting smaller and smaller, Yang Chen's secret technique was getting slower and slower. It used to take about half an hour, but now it would take at least half a day to make one. On the shrinking trunk of the Panlai Divine wood, there was now a dazzling light. Even Gao Yu and Gong Sunling had been alarmed and came to see what was going on. Seeing that Yang Chun was concentrating on the secret technique, the two women also knew what was going on. No one disturbed Yang Chun. They just found a place far away where they could see this side and continue their cultivation. However, after each cultivation, they would always pay attention to Yang Chen's side to make sure that he had no problems, and then they would continue. Yang Chun had no concept of time. He only knew that he had to refine the huge trunk in front of him into his own first wood flying sword. And the step in front of him was to create a sword embryo, which was something that could not be saved. Although for Yang Chun, when his cultivation base was higher, it would take less time and the certainty would be greater. However, Yang Chun did not want to waste time on fighting with the monsters. The process of refining the first wood flying sword embryo itself was a good process to consolidate his current cultivation base. For a full 3 years, Yang Chun was in the process of honing people's hard work and will, and did almost nothing else. Every day, he would restore his spiritual power and spiritual awareness, and then make a secret technique. Thousands of secret techniques wrapped the entire first wood flying sword embryo evenly. Now the sword embryo had been reduced to a length of 6 feet and the thickness of a wrist, which was the most suitable size for the flying sword embryo. When the last secret technique was made, the first wood flying sword embryo, which was originally wrapped in a dazzling light, suddenly converged all the light and showed its body. A small trunk and main root of the Panlai Divine wood. The whole body was covered with tiny and dense rune secret techniques. In front of Yang Chun, it was like an ordinary wooden stick. After all, it was only a sword embryo, and even the sword edge had not been opened. Yang Chun reached out and grabbed this sword embryo, feeling the feeling of the flying sword in his own mind, and his heart was satisfied. This sword embryo was obviously tempered with the first wood spirit power of the Panlai Divine wood for several years, which would have such an effect. After this refining of the rough embryo, Yang Chun could further carefully carve and turn the first wood flying sword into what he wanted. "What is this?" Gong Sunling's voice sounded from his side. She had already seen that there was no movement on Yang Chen's side, and quickly rushed here and asked curiously. "The sword embryo of the flying sword." Yang Chun turned and gave Gong Sunling an intimate smile, and then replied. She didn't know why. Seeing Yang Chen smile, Gong Sunling's face turned red. She didn't know what made her feel shy. "You can also refine the flying sword?" Gong Sunling had not seen the process of Yang Chun commenting on Wang Yang's Qilin flying sword. Naturally, Yang Chun actually refining the flying sword was very different. "Is it strange?" Yang Chun looked at Gong Sunling, and his heart was amused for a while, but he continued to say, "Don't forget, my master is a rare refining master in Chunyang Palace. As a disciple, how can I not refine the flying sword? Don't forget, our intrinsic flying swords are yours," said Yishiwen. Gao Yu's voice also sounded from the other side. She had never relaxed her attention to Yang Chun, and almost arrived at the same time as Gong Sunling. Listening to Yang Chen's answer to Gong Sunling's words, Gao Yu interrupted in time. Chapter 539. "It's still early for you to condense the natal flying sword." Yang Chen replied with a smile. "Master, senior sister, when did I not keep my promise? Just reminding you, lest you forget." Gao Yu came over with a smile. It seemed that when she saw that Yang Chun had completed the refining of the sword embryo, she was also happy for Yang Chun from the bottom of her heart. In fact, it was not the first time that Gong Sunling heard of Yang Chen's refining of the flying sword, but it was the first time that she saw it with her own eyes. In fact, during the Great Tribulation of the Devil Arts, The blood demon vine sword in Yang Chen's hands had frequently appeared in the mouths of all the cultivators who talked about it. Of course, everyone did not know that it was the blood demon vine sword. They only knew that Yang Chen, the disciple of the foundation stage of Chunyang Palace, refined a sword embryo himself. When he was looking for a century-old tree to nourish it, Lin Changhe bumped into the blade of the sword. At that time, Yang Chen had a flying sword embryo. In front of them was another flying sword embryo, and it was refined under the eyes of Gao Yu and Gong Sunling. After the first secret art was cast, all the aura of the Penglai Divine Wood was sealed by the secret art. So far, the two women still haven't seen what material this was. However, this did not prevent the two women from knowing the huge weight of this flying sword. A whole Penglai Divine Wood was forcibly refined into such a size by the secret art, but the weight was not reduced at all. It seemed to complement Yang Chen's brute force. After all, it was still just a sword embryo. The sword edge had not been opened, and the two women did not entangle on this issue. What Gao Yu cared about was whether Yang Chen was still troubled by the troubles of the spiritual awareness, so she asked on the spot. Yang Chen would have to face this problem sooner or later. Now the second grade fire seed in Yang Chen's hand has been completely absorbed, which has once again allowed Yang Chen's spiritual awareness to climb to the peak of the middle Yuanying stage. Next, as long as Yang Chen absorbs any kind of third grade fire seed, he will cross this barrier and reach the late Yuanying stage again. A third grade fire seed, just one kind, was enough for Yang Chen's cultivation base and spiritual awareness to improve by a small level. Although a single type might not be enough in the face of core condensation, his divine sense could definitely grow. Gao Yu and Gong Sunling immediately saw Yang Chen's slight hesitation. After the two women looked at each other, their worry was overflowing. Immediately after, Gong Sunling's face bloomed a bright red, and she no longer dared to look at Yang Chen. Gong Sunling's abnormal performance, Yang Chen did not care. He had now decided to bear the consequences of splitting his spiritual awareness, so his mood was relatively calm. Refining the first wood sword embryo was originally to consolidate his cultivation base. So far, the sword embryo has been formed, and the rest was fine carving, which was not even a day's work. Yang Chen quickly put away the sword embryo and asked about the progress of the two women. It had only been 60 years since Gao Yu switched to the water attribute cultivation method. Cultivating to the late stage of the foundation establishment stage was already a rare genius performance. Therefore, the retreat to accompany Yang Chen's core condensation was purely accompanying Yang Chen. If she wanted to follow the pace of Yang Chen's core condensation, she still needed at least 10 or 20 years of fire. However, because of the improvement of her spiritual awareness, Gao Yu was now more handy than before. She believed that even if there was a gap with Yang Chen, it was only a gap of 10 or 20 years. After cultivating for a long time, this gap of 10 or 20 years was simply small and pitiful. Gong Sunling's progress was amazing, and at this moment she was almost at the peak foundation establishment stage. She was also only one step away from entering the realm of the condensation core. In her previous life, Gong Sunling was a genius in cultivation. In this life, she was influenced by Yang Chen and changed some of her attitude towards life, but her cultivation was not delayed at all. Instead, there were signs of it being faster than before. It must be known that in his previous life, Yang Chen barely entered the Jidan realm in more than 300 years, and then it took almost 700 or 800 years to promote from the Jidan realm to the Yuanying realm. At that time, Gong Sunling had already turned into ashes in the process of transcending tribulation. In his previous life, Yang Chen still relied on the power of the Sun True Fire to rush into the Yuanying realm in the last 100 years of his life. Gong Sunling relied on her own excellent talent all the way and entered the Deshang stage. At that time, Yang Chen, compared with Gong Sunling, was a slag. Fortunately, in this life, from the beginning of Yang Chen's cultivation to the present, it has only been a short period of 80 years, and he has already reached the peak foundation establishment stage and was about to step into the Jidan realm. Compared with his previous life, it was not known how many times faster it was. The most important thing was that his master had embarked on a completely different path from his previous life, and senior sister Gong Sunling, with Yang Chun, would not repeat the same mistakes in the tribulation. It seemed that both Yang Chun and Gong Sunling had hoped to condense their cores in one fell swoop. The consolidation of their cultivation base was almost done. On the side of Gong Sunling, apart from cultivating, she was fighting with the monsters, and there was not much problem. Next, the two of them once again attacked the condensation core realm. Gao Yu was an experienced person, and she described her experience of condensing the Dan to the two in great detail. Yang Chen did not hide anything. Not only did he share Elder Wu Xiong's cultivation experience with the two women, but he also said his previous life's experience of condensing the Dan in the name of reading a lot of books. After all, he was a great principal golden immortal, and many of the gaps in knowledge could not be made up. Even if it was Gao Yu, listening to Yang Chen's words, couldn't help but have a feeling of enlightenment. Gong Sunling's perception was amazing, and it was even more like a treasure. Listening to it, her eyes were full of splendor, and she couldn't wait to try it out immediately. Together, Yang Chun took out a large bottle of Jade Dragon wine and tasted the wine with his master and senior sister and relaxed. He even gave each of the two women a large cup of 4C's mysterious coral liquid so that they could also sleep, eliminate fatigue, so that they could recharge and attack the Jit on stage. For Yang Chen's generosity, the two women seemed to be accustomed to it, and they did not refuse, let alone guard against Yang Chun. In front of Yang Chun, after drinking the 4C's mysterious coral liquid, they fell asleep under the protection of Yang Chun. After a short gathering, the three people dispersed again. Yang Chun did not need to guard against anyone here, so he did not pay too much attention to the whereabouts of the two women. Refining the first wood sword embryo had almost consolidated his cultivation base, and then he could start to attack the Jit on stage. Before that, Yang Chun habitually practiced all the cultivation methods, including the yellow turban strongman body refining technique, and even drank a glass of the 4C's mysterious coral liquid. He had a beautiful sleep and raised his spirit, and then began to absorb the fire seed again. This time, he absorbed the third-grade fire seed. The third-grade fire seeds collected by the sect added up to no less than 10. These 10 kinds of third-grade fire seeds were enough for Yang Chun to hit the Jit on stage. Chapter 540. Yang Chun was not worried that he could not condense his Dan, but he had to be careful of the splitting of his spiritual awareness. The most ideal situation was that Yang Chun successfully condensed his Dan, and his spiritual awareness was enhanced at the same time. In this case, the spiritual power cultivation base and the spiritual awareness cultivation base would not be too far apart, and the trouble of splitting his spiritual awareness would be avoided. But Yang Chen knew that this was just an extravagant hope. There were some things that he had to face. Now that he had figured out, Yang Chun did not have any unrealistic fantasies, but just started to practice step by step. Among the yin-yang heaven-burning fire, there were already several kinds of third-grade fire seeds. Therefore, now the primary yin-yang heaven-burning fire absorbed the third-grade fire seed without any difficulty. The third-grade fire seed that was being absorbed under the control of Yang Chen's spiritual awareness, a trace of flame was separated from the profound spirit furnace, and almost without stopping, it entered Yang Chen's body and was swallowed into the abdomen by the purple fire dragon in his body. However, this trace of flame was endless, and it was never cut off because it was swallowed by the fire dragon. Seeing that the color of the purple fire dragon seemed to be getting thicker and thicker, Yang Chen's heart was happy for a while. In his previous life, where would he have the opportunity to come into contact with this legendary flame? Not to mention Yang Chun. Even the masters who played with fire were not possible. Now that this legendary flame has been formed in Yang Chen's body, how could Yang Chun not be excited? Although the absorption of the third-grade fire seed could be spontaneously absorbed by the primary yin-yang heaven-burning fire, in the same way, the time could not be saved. Yang Chun could rest assured to cultivate other cultivation methods, as long as he always paid attention to this side. This kind of multitasking skill, after cultivating the three purities secret art, Yang Chun was already very familiar with it. It must be known that the great yin and yang five elements secret art was 10 kinds of spiritual power at the same time, and Yang Chun was still easy to master. This kind of just paying attention to it was not difficult. However, for the time being, Yang Chun did not dare to work too hard on the three purity secret art. He was absorbing the flame, and it was not suitable to cultivate the great yin and yang five element secret art. He could only work on the yellow, turban strongman body refining technique. It would take at least a few months to absorb the flames. It would be a pity to waste it. Speaking of which, after Yang Chun obtained this technique, he basically had to cultivate one cycle a day, just like the great yin yang five elemental arts, except for the fact that he had no opportunity to do anything else. So far, the yellow turban strongman body refining technique has not made much progress. This was normal. After all, this was the mortal world, not the immortal world. Yang Chun had only cultivated this kind of immortal art for 20 years, and it was only intermittent. If he wanted to achieve small success with this, he would be underestimating this cultivation method too much. Even so, Yang Chun could still sense the improvement of his physical strength with every cultivation session. After the impurities in the body were adjusted by the 4C's mysterious coral liquid, he cultivated the yellow turban strongman body refining technique. The life essence of the immortals absorbed by Yang Chun began to be stimulated bit by bit. In addition to changing Yang Chun's acquired spirit root, those life essences were all improving Yang Chun's physique, which was also the reason why Yang Chun's physical strength was so strong in this life. But until now, those life essences were really completely absorbed by Yang Chun. Yang Chun, who was in the process, did not notice that his body seemed to be changing. The body was already very strong, and at this time it seemed to be more robust. The muscles of the whole body, on the original basis, became more and more bulging. At first glance, it seemed that Yang Chun's person suddenly became thicker. The joints of the whole body were slightly cracking, and Yang Chun's sitting body was also very strangely taller. Yang Chun's whole person was like a monster returning from the wilderness. The muscles of the whole body were like small snakes, entrenched on the body, showing an indescribable ferocity and strength. The clothes made by his master and senior sister on his body were directly torn apart, and they could no longer bear the power of Yang Chun's body swelling. Boom! His sea of consciousness shook fiercely. Yang Chun didn't want to think about it directly and began to pay attention to his sea of consciousness. The yellow turban strongman body refining technique had such a benefit. It could be cultivated at any time, but he was not afraid of being interrupted. The third grade fire seed has been completely absorbed by the primary yin-yang heaven-burning fire and completely transformed into a powerful tonic. Under the great supplement of this third grade fire seed, Yang Chun's fire attribute spirit power rushed wildly, and the purple fire dragon in his sea of consciousness directly swelled a small section. The spiritual awareness almost uncontrollably broke through the bottleneck of the middle Yuanying stage and instantly entered the realm of the late Yuanying stage. Yang Chun didn't have time to feel the novelty of the spiritual awareness. There was a sudden shock in his sea of consciousness, and once again the shock before the spiritual awareness split began. Although he was mentally prepared, Yang Chun was still a little lost. However, this time was obviously not the time for Yang Chun to be lost. He immediately converged his mind and began to cultivate the three purities secret art, preparing to welcome the pain of the next split of the spiritual awareness. Suddenly, Yang Chun suddenly noticed that there was someone in front of him. The one who appeared here, apart from his master, was his senior sister. It must be that his master noticed the abnormality and wanted to come over and rely on the supreme mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra double cultivation to help Yang Chun suppress it. Master, it's useless. Yang Chun didn't open his eyes, but said calmly. From the last spiritual awareness double cultivation, Yang Chun knew that he and his master had reached a balance. The next spiritual awareness double cultivation could only enhance the spiritual awareness of both sides at the same time, and it was impossible to complement each other. "It's me, junior brother." Gong Sunling's voice suddenly sounded in Yang Chen's ear, making Yang Chen surprised and quickly open his eyes. On the opposite side, Gong Sunling was standing in front of him with a blushing face. She was at a loss. It seemed that she couldn't think of any way for a while, and her anxious expression was overflowing. "Senior sister?" Yang Chen was shocked. "What's going on?" "You don't have to say much, I know." Although Gong Sunling's face was red, her words were very sharp. "Uncle Gao has told me everything. Even the supreme mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra has been passed on to me. I will help you." When she said the last few words, Gong Sunling was almost too shy to look up, but her movements did not stop at all. It seemed that she wanted to sit opposite Yang Chen and form a forehead position with Yang Chen. However, it was very difficult to do this now. Yang Chen didn't know the changes in his body when he was cultivating the yellow, turban strongman body refining technique, but it was clear that Yang Chen's body was getting stronger and stronger, and his swollen muscles had made it an extravagant hope for Gong Sunling to complete that posture. Feeling the increasingly intense spiritual awareness shock from Yang Chen's body, Gong Sunling fiercely gritted her teeth, took a step forward, and sat on Yang Chen's legs. Her slender legs were directly wrapped around Yang Chen's thick waist, and at the same time, her forehead was against Yang Chen's forehead. Chapter 541. Yang Chen's whole person was stunned, and his whole body did not dare to move. But Gong Sunling's movements let Yang Chen easily feel the softness of Gong Sunling's body, especially when Gong Sunling's legs were wrapped around his waist and her hands were around his neck. Yang Chen's heart was beating fast. "What are you doing, fool?" Seeing that Yang Chen was stunned in place, Gong Sunling could not help but snort, and then she closed her eyes in shame. But the faster and faster spiritual awareness shock from Yang Chen's body made her wake up immediately, and quickly put her forehead against Yang Chen's forehead, and then began to work on her own. At this time, if Yang Chen still did not understand what happened, Yang Chen was a fool. Master Gao, you must have found that her spiritual awareness double cultivation with Yang Chen could no longer solve Yang Chen's troubles. So she put the idea on senior apprentice sister Gong Sunling's head. Originally, Yang Chen had some resistance, but looking at Gong Sunling for him, determined to do such a shy thing, Yang Chen's heart suddenly softened, no longer resisted, closed his eyes, and began to work. Although it was the first time for the two to work together for double cultivation, there was a silent, tacit understanding, and it was easy to enter that kind of oblivious state. Gong Sunling only felt that her whole person was flying in the air, and could not land at all. The kind of feeling that made her feel like she was indulging in it brought her supreme pleasure. She had never tasted such a feeling, and Gong Sunling was a little bit unable to stop. Compared with Yang Chen, Gong Sunling's spiritual awareness cultivation was very normal, almost close to the level of the early Jidan stage. The spiritual awareness between the two ran at the same time, the highest mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra. Yang Chen's surging spiritual awareness seemed to have found an outlet and rushed madly to Gong Sunling's sea of consciousness. Gong Sunling's sea of consciousness was originally white. At this moment, there was a sudden change. The clear air rose and the turbid air fell, directly becoming two distinct parts. The most amazing thing was that a solid land was formed below, and in the land there was even a strange aura, like the most original aura of the earth attribute. At this time, neither of them cared about this. They were just immersed in the tacit understanding and joy brought by the spiritual sense dual cultivation. They were no longer separated. Gao Yu silently appeared not far from the two of them, as if she was protecting them. However, looking at the current posture of Yang Chen and Gong Sunling was held in Yang Chen's arms, hugging Yang Chen's neck and wrapping around Yang Chen's waist. I don't know why. Gao Yu's heart always had such an indescribable sadness. This was because Yang Chen's body shape had changed. Gao Yu warned herself, but her eyes couldn't help but stare at the two, as if afraid that they would do something further. After watching for a long time, Gao Yu realized that she was wrong. shook her head slightly, found a place to sit down, and guarded the two from distance. Soon Gao Yu thought of a problem. Now Gong Sunling and Yang Chen's cultivation used such a shameful posture. Then in the future, Yang Chen's body shape did not change. When she wanted to double cultivate with Yang Chen again, wouldn't she have to use this posture? How could this be? We are master and disciple? Gao Yu suddenly groaned in her heart. The problem in front of her made her begin to entangle. Even when she saw Gong Sunling and Yang Chen's cultivation like this, she didn't know where to put it, and her mind was full of this problem. The first double cultivation of the highest mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra took a long time. At that time, Gao Yu and Yang Chen lasted at least a few months. Of course, at that time, Yang Chen was healing Gao Yu for a large part of the time. Of course, Gong Sunling and Yang Chen did not have the trouble of healing. But even so, the first double cultivation of the two took a full 2 months. It was not so simple to let a late Yuanying stage spiritual awareness master and a peak foundation stage spiritual awareness coordinate and balance. It took a long process. The two of them maintained this posture for 2 whole months, not moving at all. The kind of spiritual awareness shock on Yang Chen's body finally became slower and slower, and finally stopped, and Gong Sunling's spiritual awareness also began to rise wildly. The peak foundation stage, the early Jiedan stage, the middle Jiedan stage, the late Jiedan stage, the peak Jiedan stage, the early Yuanying stage, Gong Sunling's spiritual awareness cultivation base was simply irresistible. It rose madly all the way. After breaking through several realms in a row, it stopped at the early Yuanying stage. And Yang Chen's spiritual awareness also dropped again from the late Yuanying stage, the middle Yuanying stage, the early Yuanying stage, and after reaching the early Yuanying stage, there was no change. This time, the spiritual awareness cultivation base of the two was basically adjusted to the same realm. But in essence, it was still slightly different. Gong Sunling's spiritual awareness cultivation base was only forcibly raised to the early Yuanying stage. But Yang Chen's sea of consciousness was once again condensed and compressed. His spiritual awareness was like a well-tempered iron chain, becoming more and more tough. Finally, both of them stopped, and their foreheads that were pressed together also separated. However, the wonderful feeling in the process of double cultivation made both of them somewhat unsatisfied, and they were still in the aftertaste. Especially Gong Sunling. She experienced that wonderful feeling, and her body was still in the arms of Yang Chen, posing such a shameful posture. Even if she was about to condense her core, she was still shy and could not help herself. She buried her head in the side of Yang Chen's neck and did not dare to look up again. There was a sudden cough from the side, and the two people who were in the aftertaste woke up. Gong Sunling couldn't help but blush again and hurriedly jumped up from Yang Chen's body, flashed to the side, and looked up to see Gao Yu's smiling face. Gao Yu no longer dared to look at Gao Yu, and hurriedly lowered her head. Yang Chen was a bit thick-skinned. He had been sitting there, and his face did not change. In addition to the aftertaste of double cultivation, Yang Chen was also checking the changes in his spiritual awareness. This time, the double cultivation seemed to be more effective. The spiritual awareness had been condensed. Yang Chen even had an illusion. Even if the golden bell in his body rang again, it would not make him faint. His own spiritual awareness was already fully capable of confronting the bell, and he no longer had to worry that he would be shocked by his own body protection magic weapon. How is the effect? Gao Yu next to him saw that Yang Chen did not speak for a long time, and couldn't help but become anxious and asked aloud. Even Gong Sunling raised her head worriedly. If it was useless, wouldn't it be a waste of double cultivation, and it would also cause Yang Chen's spiritual awareness cultivation base to fall? I'm fine. Yang Chen raised his head and replied to the two women who cared about him. But he began to think about how to face the two women in the future. Chapter 542. Gong Sunling's move was obviously arranged by Gao Yu, and Gong Sunling herself did not resist. Obviously, the two women were already in an offensive and defensive alliance. There was no doubt about this. Yang Chen had some headaches. In this way, he would also owe Gong Sunling a lot. Yang Chun, who has no experience in this kind of thing, once again fell into a happy worry. However, now was obviously not the time to worry about this. Otherwise, it would hurt the hearts of the two women at the same time. Yang Chun understood this, so he answered very quickly, and then said, "Thank you, master. Thank you, senior sister." These two thanks were obviously thanks to the two women who secretly discussed to help him solve the problem behind his back. When the two women heard that Yang Chun was fine, they were all happy and did not hide their happiness. How does senior sister feel now? Yang Chun could know the changes in his spiritual awareness, and he could clearly know the changes in Gong Sunling's spiritual awareness. But Gong Sunling's own feelings did not know, so he asked, "I'm fine." Gong Sunling now explored her own sea of consciousness and was immediately shocked. Her spiritual awareness had skyrocketed so much. While she was happy, she was also shocked by Yang Chen's powerful spiritual awareness cultivation base. After balancing with her own double cultivation, he could improve so much. So how strong was he before? It was no wonder that Yang Chun had done many seemingly impossible things before. With such a powerful spiritual awareness, he could indeed do a lot of unbelievable things. Of course, for Gong Sunling, the spiritual awareness cultivation base suddenly improved to the early Yuanying stage, and the next solidifying Dan was more confident, and there was no need to worry about any risks. Yang Chun solved the trouble, and the two women were very happy. That kind of happiness seemed to be happier than when they could all condense Dan. This made Yang Chun grateful and secretly vowed in his heart that he would never let the two women be hurt. "Senior sister, there's a cultivation method that may be suitable for you to cultivate now." Suddenly thinking of something, Yang Chun said to Gong Sunling, "After cultivating, maybe it will be easier to condense the core." The two women were stunned at the same time. Yang Chun had an endless amount of things on him, but everyone thought that he had read a lot of miscellaneous books. They didn't expect that he actually had a cultivation technique. Gong Sunling was pleasantly surprised as she took a piece of jade slip from Yang Chen's hand and began to explore it with her spiritual awareness. "Earth element true art?" A pleasantly surprised voice burst out from Gong Sunling's mouth. As an earth-attributed cultivator, how could she not know what the fifth Earth True Art was? However, when Yang Chun gave it to her, she felt that it was unreal. Gaoyu next to her immediately realized that she had just gotten the 10th Water True Secret Art and 10th Water True Essence from Yang Chun not long ago, and it was also because her spiritual awareness had broken through to the early Yuanying stage. It was not surprising that Gong Sunling was in the same situation. Without the 5th Earth True Essence, how do you want little Ling to cultivate? Last time Yang Chun gave Gaoyu, he gave it together with the 10th Water True Essence. Now Yang Chun only gave the 5th Earth True Art, but there was no 5th Earth True Essence. Wouldn't it be difficult for Gong Sunling? This disciple has already cultivated the 5th Earth True Art. Yang Chun smiled and raised his hand, and the two women immediately noticed a pure aura of the earth attribute from Yang Chun's fingers. Yang Chun explained, "The 5th Earth True Essence is not easy to get. Senior apprentice sister can absorb it directly from me." This was also a way to absorb it directly from Yang Chun's body. It could also save the trouble of refining it, and cultivation would be much more convenient. Moreover, Gong Sunling firmly believed that as long as she finished cultivating this 5th Earth True Art, she would be able to condense the core immediately. However, Gong Sunling thought more than Gaoyu. When she heard Yang Chen's words, her face changed, and she suddenly asked, "Did you do what happened in the Barren Sand Valley?" In the past, the Taishaman shielded Chu Hong, and for the 5th Earth True Essence, they also made a lot of arrangements in the Barren Sand Valley, but they failed. Not only did hundreds of years of efforts go to waste, but even Chu Hong was killed. The 5th Earth True Essence was divided by several major sects, but there was no Taishaman. Now Yang Chun actually said that he had cultivated the 5th Earth True Art, and when the Taishaman had an accident in the Barren Sand Valley, Yang Chun happened to be present. Gong Sunling's first reaction was that this matter was related to Yang Chun. It seemed that Yang Chun also brought back Shi Kuei and Xie Sha from the Barren Sand Valley, which was simply a mess of suspicion. Master, senior apprentice sister has a good idea. There is no need to publicize it. Yangchen did not deny it, but just reminded. Gong Sunling didn't know how to describe her apprentice. At the time of the incident in the barren sand valley, Yangchen was only in the early stage of the foundation stage, and he dared to do such a deceptive thing in a large group of Yuanying stage masters. She didn't know whether to say that he was bold or that he was lucky. In addition to the shock, Gong Sunling had to force Yangchen to explain the situation at the time. She began to clearly remember that Yangchen didn't care much about Chu Hong. Later, Chu Hong insulted Gao Yu, and Yangchen was angry and chased after him. The details of this, she must know. Gao Yu has heard it once, but when she listened to Yangchen's story again, she couldn't help but feel warm in her heart. This was Yangchen chasing Chu Hong for her and taking risks for her. She would not get tired of hearing it many times. Gong Sunling learned the inside story for the first time, and Gong Sunling listened to the whole process in shock. After listening, there was another burst of amazement. This junior apprentice brother Yang gave her too many surprises. But Gong Sunling wanted to know more about Yangchen. This change of mentality, even Gong Sunling herself did not understand. She wanted to ask again, but was stopped by Gao Yu. Now Yangchen and Gong Sunling were both on the verge of jet-on. Yangchen was fine, but Gong Sunling couldn't be too excited, otherwise it would affect her cultivation. Gao Yu is Yangchen's master, and Yangchen and Gong Sunling certainly would not have any opinions. Of course, apart from the identity of this master, Gong Sunling had another kind of respect for Gao Yu, but this could not be shown in front of Yangchen. Your body size, how did it get bigger again? There was another reason why Yangchen had been sitting, that was his clothes and trousers had been torn, and he did not dare to get up casually. Gao Yu quickly threw Yangchen a piece of animal skin clothes that had already been made when she was guarding, and asked, "It's a problem with the cultivation method." Seeing that the two women had turned around, Yangchen quickly changed the clothes that had been torn and replied, "When I have a little success in my cultivation method, I will be able to return to normal. Your body size, Sun Qingxue and Shi Shanshan are not surprised?" Gao Yu asked curiously. Yangchen remembered that it seemed that after he changed his body shape and went to see Sun Qingxue and Shi Shanshan, the two women were not particularly surprised. He didn't know if they didn't care how Yangchen's body shape would change, or if there was a similar body refining technique in the big sex, so they were not surprised at all. Chapter 543. However, this issue was not known for the time being. The most important thing now was to let Gong Sunling cultivate the fifth Earth True Secret Art. Yangchen had the fifth Earth True Essence in his body, unlike the one given to Gao Yu before. This inevitably required two people to cooperate with the cultivation, at least before Gong Sunling absorbed enough fifth Earth True Essence. Yangchen had to accompany her to cultivate, releasing the fifth Earth True Essence in his body for Gong Sunling to use. It seemed that Gong Sunling was very happy, not knowing whether it was because of the cultivation method or because of Yangchen's company. What surprised Yangchen was that Gao Yu had not cultivated the 10th Water True Secret Art until now. Before, because of Yangchen's spiritual awareness problem, Gao Yu was afraid that Yangchen would break out at some time, and she could not take care of it because of the cultivation method, so she had not cultivated. His master's affection, Yangchen's heart was warm, but now, Yangchen was almost certain that there would be no problems before the solidifying core, so Gao Yu's cultivation of the 10th Water True Secret Art was also put on the agenda. Now that both women have cultivated with Yangchen's spiritual awareness, everyone no longer avoided anything, and no longer cultivated separately, so they started cultivating in the same room. Before cultivating, Yangchen still used the control method of the Immortal's cave to move 3 spiritual veins to ensure that the 3 people would never have the problem of insufficient spiritual power during their cultivation. After explaining the experience of absorbing the 10th Water True Essence to Gao Yu in detail, watching Gao Yu enter the state of cultivation, Yangchen turned around and explained the secrets of the 5th Earth True Secret Art to Gong Sunling. Compared with the direct absorption of the 5th Earth True Essence, it was easier to absorb the 5th Earth True Essence from Yangchen's body after Yangchen's cultivation. However, In the process of cultivation, Yang Chun and Gong Sunling always held hands, and the requirements for Yang Chun were higher. It had to be said that Yang Chen's current body shape was too much of a hindrance to this kind of cultivation that required him to hold his hands. His muscles were so swollen that he could no longer assume the standard posture of 5 hearts facing the heavens. He couldn't even cross his legs normally. He could only use a very casual sitting posture to cultivate. If they wanted to hold each other's hands, they had to be a little closer to each other. Otherwise, either Gong Sunling or Yang Chun would have to bend down. No matter who it was, it wouldn't be comfortable. Yang Chun didn't expect that the yellow turban strongman body refining technique would have such a drawback, but he couldn't solve it at the moment. Gong Sunling was still generous. After failing to cultivate face-to-face, Gong Sunling simply asked Yang Chun to spread his legs. She turned her back to Yang Chun and sat directly between Yang Chun's legs. In this way, it was as if Gong Sunling was sitting in Yang Chun's arms with her back facing him. The posture looked very ambiguous, but the problem of holding hands was no longer a problem. In the cultivation, Yang Chun had to constantly control his hands slowly, output the 5th Earth True Essence, and carefully control the speed of the output. If the output was too slow, Gong Sunling's absorption of the 5th Earth True Essence would fail, and if the output was too fast, it would hurt Gong Sunling. Fortunately, Yang Chun had rich experience. Even if he didn't cultivate the Earth Attribute cultivation method in his previous life, the control of the great principle Golden Immortal was still there. It was not difficult to control the output of spiritual power at a uniform speed. But even so, Yang Chun and Gong Sunling carefully experimented a few times before determining the best speed of Yang Chun's output of the 5th Earth True Essence. Then the two did not talk much nonsense and entered the state of cultivation. Yang Chun first cultivated the 5th Earth True Secret Art. The absorbed 5th Earth True Essence would gradually grow in his body with the daily practice. Compared to the seed that Yang Chun absorbed at that time, it was not known how many times stronger it was now. Gong Sunling only wanted to absorb enough 5th Earth True Essence to make a seed, not to deprive Yang Chun of his cultivation. So the hindrance to Yang Chun was not great. Since it was to cooperate with Gong Sunling's cultivation, Yang Chun also concentrated on the simple output. Everyone knew that it was simple to absorb the 5th Earth True Essence from Yang Chun, but after all, it was the 5th Earth True Essence. Even with the spiritual awareness of the Yuanying stage, Gong Sunling was still in the foundation establishment stage, which was still a bit low. This absorption went on for several months. Gong Sunling's spiritual awareness skyrocketed, and she was not used to it. The spiritual awareness of the Yuanying stage did not help her much at first. For the first month, it was Gong Sunling who was adapting to the changes of this spiritual awareness. This was also unexpected for Yang Chun. With his experience as a great principal Golden Immortal, of course, he did not need to adapt too much, but Gong Sunling did not have this experience at all. It was not until a month later that she could control it like a finger. The next process was on the right track. The 5th Earth True Essence in Yang Chun's body was absorbed into Gong Sunling's body, refined and integrated, replacing the original Earth Attribute Spirit power. Half a year later, Gong Sunling's 5th Earth True Secret Art was finally completed, and she no longer needed to absorb Yang Chun's 5th Earth True Essence, and she could continuously nourish and strengthen herself. At this point, Yang Chun's task was completely completed. It had to be said that the 5th Earth True Secret Art was really powerful, and the 5th Earth True Essence absorbed was the most original 5th Earth Spirit power, which was much higher than the original 5th Earth Spirit power in Gong Sunling's body. It took Gong Sunling 2 days to replenish the condensed 5th Earth True Essence after the completion of the cultivation. Everything was natural and logical. Originally, Gong Sunling was already at the peak of the foundation establishment stage, and she was only 1 step away from entering the process of solidifying Dan. After cultivating the 5th Earth True Essence, she immediately noticed the sudden change in the spiritual power in her body and naturally began to solidify her Dan. The drastic change in the heaven and earth essence chi produced during the solidifying Dan was 100 times stronger than that of the foundation establishment stage. The surrounding spiritual power, as if being attracted by a black hole, gathered crazily toward the body of Gong Sunling, and even affected Gao Yu, who was not far away. Gao Yu is also at the critical moment of cultivating the 10th water true secret art at this moment. Fortunately, Yang Chun was awake and quickly moved 2 more spiritual veins in the Immortal's cave, which met the needs of Gong Sunling's solidifying Dan, and Gao Yu was not greatly affected. The process of solidifying Dan was not done overnight. After the spiritual power condensed from the ordinary state into a small Jidan seed, it would take a lot of time to stabilize the Jidan seed and then concentrate all the original spiritual power into the Jidan. This process would last at least a year. Both women were in a state of cultivation, and Yang Chun naturally wanted to protect the 2 women. He couldn't cultivate anything else, so naturally he could only choose the yellow turban strongman body refining technique. In addition to cultivation, Yang Chun did not forget to look after the state of Shao Tian. After leaving the Dragon Palace treasure house last time, Yang Chun had rarely paid attention to Shao Tian. Chapter 544. After so many years, Shao Tian has already absorbed the dragon chi absorbed in the treasure house of the Dragon Palace. The overall body size is only slightly larger, but it is not as exaggerated as Yang Chen's. From the Immortal's cave, found a lot of magic weapon fragments. Yang Chun was almost exhausted. Shao Tian liked that kind of fragment very much. He would suck a piece when he had nothing to do. It seems that those fragments were regarded as snacks. Most of the time, Shao Tian was still entrenched on the bright ray sword and the blood demon vine sword, playing, and also nourishing the 2 flying swords. Now, there was a sword embryo of the first with flying sword, and Yang Chun also put it together. Although it was not completed, there would be no harm. After playing with Shao Tian, Yang Chun suddenly found a little change. It seemed that on Shao Tian's face, there were some more vague patterns. Although these patterns were not very obvious, and it did not seem to change the appearance of Shao Tian much, but Yang Chun could guess something from the shape of Shao Tian attached to the weapon. These patterns, if you remove the head of Shao Tian and imagine it, you can find that it was a hideous ghost head with a murderous aura. Perhaps this was some of the manifestations of Shao Tian's maturity after absorbing the dragon chi. The bloodline of Shao Tian Yazi has only been stimulated for a few decades. Yang Chun did not expect it to grow into a terrifying power immediately. Now, this has exceeded Yang Chen's expectations. To be able to personally participate in the maturation process of Shao Tian, for Yang Chun, it was not a kind of luck. Half a year later, Gao Yu's cultivation was finally completed. The whole bottle of 10th water true essence was absorbed by Gao Yu, and the 10th water true secret art was also successfully cultivated. Gao Yu, who was already in the middle stage of the foundation stage, as soon as the 10th water true secret art was completed, her cultivation base rose directly to the peak of the foundation stage. This time, Gao Yu's cultivation base improved too fast, and Yang Chun had to seriously ask Gao Yu to take a longer time to consolidate her cultivation base. The task of guarding was handed over to Gao Yu, and Yang Chun could finally start to practice. Fortunately, for the time being, Yang Chun does not need too much trouble, as long as he absorbs the remaining 3rd-grade fire seeds. With the primary yin-yang heaven burning fire that has grown to a certain extent, the absorption of fire seeds can be carried out automatically. Yang Chun only needs to pay a little attention to it. Most of the time, Yang Chun can also cultivate the yellow turban strongman body refining technique. The 3 purities secret art, Yang Chun did not intend to touch it again before the condensing Dan, lest his spiritual awareness increase to an uncontrollable level. On one side, Gong Sunling's condensing Dan caused a vision of heaven and earth. On the other side, Yang Chun was leisurely absorbing the flame and cultivating the yellow turban strongman body refining technique. Gao Yu next to him was carefully guarding. It was a very calm scene. Gong Sunling was indeed a talented cultivation genius. In just a few months, her body had already burst out a gold core aura, and it was getting stronger and stronger. Gao Yu, who had the experience of condensing Dan, of course, knew that she was now gradually entering a good state and was very happy for her. Yang Chun did not have the same performance as Gong Sunling. Instead, there was a constant crackling sound of the joints in his body. The muscles on his body were already developed. During the cultivation process, it could even be seen that Yang Chen's muscles have been strengthening. Thinking of the ambiguous posture of Gong Sunling and Yang Chun when they were cultivating with their spiritual awareness, Gao Yu couldn't help but smile and shake her head, but then her face turned red. If it was like this in the future, if she and Yang Chun had a spiritual awareness double cultivation, wouldn't she have to use that shameful posture? Yang Chun, who was immersed in cultivation, did not pay attention to his surroundings. There were people he absolutely trusted here, and there was nothing to guard against. The absorption speed of the third-grade fire seed was much faster, and the cultivation of the yellow turban strongman body refining technique seemed to have reached a critical point. As long as he broke through this shackle, he could complete the goal of the first layer of the yellow turban strongman body refining technique. In the description of the body refining technique, after the completion of the first layer of the body refining technique, the cultivator would reach the power of 100,000 Jin. Of course, the size would also become a huge body that could bear the power of 300,000 Jin. In the midst of the sound of the muscles and bones like popping beans, Yang Chen's muscles finally swelled to a critical point. Abruptly, Yang Chen's whole body fiercely made a loud explosion, and then all the movement stopped. Gao Yu discovered the abnormality of Yang Chun for the first time. She was about to rush over, but she saw that Yang Chun had opened his eyes and stood up. "Be careful, you are still absorbing the flame." Gao Yu was shocked. Of course, she knew what Yang Chun was doing. Seeing Yang Chun standing up regardless of absorbing the flame, she couldn't help but be shocked. "It's okay, master. I can still control it." Yang Chun smiled at his master, indicating that it was okay. His body began to move. Just casually twisting his neck and shaking his wrist, Yang Chen's body made an abnormal sound, giving people an unusually strange feeling of power. Yes, the sense of power. Gao Yu only felt that Yang Chun was just standing there. There was an oppression that could not be ignored. The already unreasonably strong body was like a hill, as if between the raising of his hands and feet, he could have the power of thunder. What made Gao Yu dumbfounded was that Yang Chun now stretched out his arm. The thickest part was as thick as Gao Yu's waist, and even more. Gao Yu and Yang Chun stood together. They were simply petite. If others ask in the future, you have to make it clear to me that your body refining technique was not taught by me. Gao Yu, who loved beauty by nature, looked at Yang Chen's gorilla-like body and couldn't help but be a little angry. If people misunderstood that the body refining technique she taught had such an effect, how could Gao Yu live? Of course, Master is so beautiful and pleasant. How can she teach such a body refining technique? Yang Chun said with a smile. "Why did you stop?" After complaining about Yang Chun, Gao Yu asked again. "The first layer of the body refining technique is completed." Yang Chun replied with a smile. "The power of 10,000 Jin." It was said that it was the power of 10,000 Jin, but Yang Chun knew that his body was more than just the power of 10,000 Jin. When cultivating, the starting point was higher than the general yellow turban strongman, and the effect of cultivation was naturally better than the ordinary yellow turban strongman. According to Yang Chen's estimation, he could now have almost 500,000 Jin of power, not to mention more. This kind of power, not to mention the ordinary Jidan stage master, even the power of the Yuanying stage master sword could not reach it. Gao Yu was stunned on the spot. The power of 10,000 Jin. Doesn't it mean that even if Yang Chun does not have the slightest spirit power cultivation base, relying on brute force, he can take his bright ray sword and fight with a master who is higher than him? Her own disciple, Gao Yu is now more and more unable to see through. Judging from the performance not long ago, Yang Chun also passed on to her own highest mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra, 10th Water, True Secret Art. Who is the master and who is the apprentice? Chapter 545. Although he was curious about how much power he had now, Yang Chun still couldn't test it. First, he was absorbing the fire seed, and second, Gong Sunling was condensing her Dan not far away, and it would not be so wonderful to disturb her. After the spiritual awareness double cultivation with Gong Sunling, Yang Chen's spiritual awareness condensed to a jaw-dropping level. The third grade fire seed that could improve Yang Chen's spiritual awareness before could no longer achieve the original effect. Perhaps Yang Chen's primary yin-yang heaven-burning fire already contains enough third-grade fire seeds. After Yang Chun completely absorbed a third-grade fire seed this time, it was not like before. The spiritual awareness skyrocketed. It only increased a little. At best, Yang Chen's early Yuanying stage spiritual awareness was promoted to the peak of the early Yuanying stage. With this fire seeds test, Yang Chun was overjoyed. At least according to this situation, he would at least absorb the fire seed to the Jiedan stage, and he would not have to worry about the splitting of his spiritual awareness. As for after the Jiedan stage, there would be no big trouble for the time being. After all, it was a big realm. The yin-yang heaven-burning fire that absorbed a third-grade fire seed did not have much change for the time being, but the two fire dragons in his sea of consciousness had become a lot bigger. Originally, he could vaguely distinguish the head and the tail. Now, it was clearer, but it was still far from becoming two fire dragons. Yang Chen did not stop and continued again. There were still several third-grade fire seeds in the profound spirit furnace, which could almost balance the third fire and fourth fire. Yang Chen certainly would not waste it and continued to absorb. Time could not be saved, but he could save energy. Yang Chen did not expect the yin-yang heaven-burning fire to have this kind of benefit. He was happy and leisurely. He cultivated the yellow turban strongman body refining technique in the process of absorbing the flame. Yang Chun has completed the cultivation of the yellow turban strongman body refining technique and is now entering the second stage. Unfortunately, the first stage and the second stage were the most developed stages of the cultivator's body shape. This also meant that Yang Chen's current body shape would last for a long time. However, for the time being, Yang Chun did not seem to reject such a body shape. It was precisely because of such a body shape that Gong Sunling had to adopt a very ambiguous posture when she cooperated with Yang Chun to practice. Although Yang Chun didn't have too many thoughts, he didn't reject the feeling when the two of them were intimate. If he were to dual cultivate with his master, would he also have to make such an ambiguous gesture with his master? Yang Chun suddenly looked forward to it, looking forward to the spiritual awareness double cultivation with his master again. Under Yang Chen's somewhat malicious anticipation, Gong Sunling's core condensation process was finally completed. The moment it was completed, it triggered another huge heaven and earth anomaly. The heaven and earth spiritual energy quickly gathered on Gong Sunling's body, and it only stopped after 2 hours. Congratulations! Congratulations! Two congratulatory words came from Gao Yu in Yang Chen's mouth. Gong Sunling opened her eyes and heard the voices of the two people before she got up. Thank you, uncle. Thank you, junior brother Yang. Gong Sunling, of course, knew why the two were here. They were all guarding her, so she immediately thanked them. Speaking of it, Gong Sunling was the first to be promoted to the Jiedan stage in Yang Chen's small group. Gao Yu's water attribute spiritual power cultivation was a bit late. Reaching the peak foundation stage was already an outstanding cultivation speed, but she still didn't catch up with Gong Sunling. Whether it was Gong Sunling or Gao Yu, both women were newly promoted and needed a long time to consolidate their cultivation base. Especially Gong Sunling. She had just condensed her Dan. If she didn't spend more than 10 years to consolidate it, it would have an impact on her future cultivation base. In Yang Chen's current state, he didn't need the two women to protect him. The two women knew that they couldn't help him. They made an appointment to go to the door of the Jiedan stage and left Yang Chen alone here. Alone here, Yang Chen was more focused. While absorbing the fire seeds, he continued to cultivate the body refining technique. The absorption of the fire seeds was automatic, but Yang Chen was now a little worried. In his previous life, there was only one kind of spiritual power Jiedan, But now, Yang Chun has to face two kinds of fire attribute spiritual power at the same time. What kind of abnormalities would there be? This problem did not require Yang Chun to think for a long time, and soon Yang Chun had to face it. After continuing to absorb two kinds of third-grade flames, Yang Chun found that his spiritual awareness cultivation base had once again risen to the middle Yuanying stage. Next, there were two more kinds of third-grade fire seeds. This time, Yang Chun was finally pushed to the edge of the Jidan stage. Boom! The two fire dragons in his body, at this moment, suddenly underwent earth-shaking changes. The fire dragons formed by the yin-yang heaven-burning fire suddenly began to shrink rapidly, and in a short time, they became two pocket-sized fire dragons. The two small fire dragons were still purple and cyan. In the perception of Yang Chen's spiritual awareness, they quickly shrank into two sesame-sized fireballs. This was the precursor of the Jidan stage. The two Jidan seeds had begun to take shape. The next step was for Yang Chun to nourish and strengthen the Jidan. Yang Chun was familiar with the process of Jidan, but condensing two Jidan seeds at the same time was something that Yang Chun didn't expect. However, Yang Chen's mind was firm, and he was naturally not too surprised. Two was two. Anyway, his yin-yang five-element secret art had 10 kinds of spiritual power, and he didn't feel that it would be in normal Jidan. The surrounding spiritual power was madly supplemented and injected into the two Jidan seeds. The two sesame-sized seeds also slowly grew with the influx of spiritual power. However, the speed of increase was almost comparable to a snail's crawl, or even worse. Such a huge supply of spiritual power, it only increased a little bit in Yang Chen's feeling. If he wanted to reach the normal size of at least an egg, such a day would last for at least a year. Fortunately, Yang Chen's yin-yang heaven-burning fire was different from other people's Jidan, and it could still be quickly supplemented by swallowing the fire seeds. And it just so happened that Yang Chun still had a lot of third-grade fire seeds in his hands. The Jidan seed has been formed. As soon as the flame in Yang Chen's profound spirit furnace touched Yang Chen's hand, it automatically turned into a purple light or cyan light and entered the Jidan seed. With the infusion of spiritual power and the flame swallowing, the Jidan seed began to grow at twice the growth rate of the ordinary Jidan seed. What surprised Yang Chun was that the two Jidan seeds could absorb two kinds of third-grade fire seeds at the same time. The third fire and fourth fire were absorbed at the same time, and the speed was doubled. The spiritual power in Yang Chen's body was 10 times more than that of others. At this time, the double Jidan seeds were formed, and the spiritual power absorbed was at least twice as much as that of ordinary people. For a time, the spiritual power of the surrounding spiritual vein was almost sucked into the body by Yang Chun, like a whale sucking water. Chapter 546. If someone was next to him, they would find that Yang Chun had now become a huge black hole. The spiritual power of several spiritual veins gathered madly towards Yang Chun. Even if it was next to him, it was impossible to absorb any spiritual power here. Two Jidan seeds, and they were both fire-attributed Jidan seeds. Under the yin and yang complementation, they showed a terrifying ability to absorb spiritual power during the seed period. The huge spiritual power entered Yang Chen's body. After the simple absorption of the yin-yang five-element secret art, it directly came to the two Jidan seeds of Yang Chun in his dantian. At this time, whether it was the fire attribute, spiritual power, or other attributes, the Jidan seeds seemed to be hungry and all of them were absorbed. When Gao Yu and Gong Sunling came back to see Yang Chun together, they found that he was already in the process of nourishing the Jidan seeds. Neither of the two women said much. They just sat and watched from a distance, guarding him from a distance. This nourishment, Yang Chun absorbed all the third-grade fire seeds. It took more than a year for the Jidan seeds to finally be nourished and grow to the size of a plum. At this point, the nourishment process was completely over. At the end of the process, the spiritual power of heaven and earth rioted again, which lasted for almost 3 hours. Compared to Gong Sunling's half an hour, it was several times more time. After the formation of the Jidan, the fire attribute spiritual power seemed to be directly compressed by 10 times, and even the overall speed of spiritual power absorption was at least 3 or 4 times faster. The Jidon stage was fundamentally different from the Foundation stage. The change in the Sea of Consciousness seemed to be the least obvious. Even the 2 fire dragons were still 2 fire dragons. However, the change was not obvious compared to the previous appearance. It was not substantial. When the spiritual power broke out in the late stage, Yangqin's Sea of Consciousness was also like the Jidon seeds, shrinking rapidly, and was compressed at least 3 times. The original 150 acres of the Sea of Consciousness was almost reduced to 50 acres according to the original proportion. Then it was the process of absorbing Yangqin's spiritual awareness madly and strengthening it again. At the end of the process, it was restored to its original size. However, in terms of density, his current Sea of Consciousness was already at least dozens of times larger than before. Yangqin's spiritual sense soared again when he entered the Golden Core realm, from the Middle Nascent Soul realm, the Late Nascent Soul realm, and directly soared to the Peak Nascent Soul realm. The compression of the Sea of Consciousness also meant that the quality of the spiritual awareness had been further improved. At this time, the spiritual awareness of the Peak Yuanying stage was many times stronger than that of Yangqin before the double cultivation. At this moment, even if the golden bell rang directly at Yangqin, Yangqin would not be affected. The spiritual awareness cultivated by the 3 purities secret art and the supreme mystery Yin-Yang Heart Sutra was very different from the ordinary spiritual awareness. A 3rd grade fire seed has been completely unable to improve the level of Yangqin's fire attribute spirit power, and even the effect of improving his spiritual awareness is limited. If he wanted to continue to absorb fire seeds to level up, he would need at least a 4th grade fire seed. Unfortunately, at the 4th grade fire seed, it was already a precious fire seed. Most fire elementalists would choose to keep it for their own use, and few people would sell it. Even if it was sold, it was also at the internal auction of the major sections. Although Chunyang Palace promised a large number of spirit stones and sect contributions, they have not received a 4th grade fire seed or above. For Yangqin, who already had several kinds of 5th grade fire seeds in his hands, the 4th grade fire seed was not too precious, but unfortunately for the Yin-Yang heaven-burning fire, the 4th grade fire seed was a necessary thing. The upgrade of the Yin-Yang heaven-burning fire could not skip a certain level. Just as it was formed at the beginning, although there were already several kinds of 3rd grade fire seeds, it still needed 99981 kinds of fire seeds to form. Continuing to absorb the fire seeds of various grades for a long time would be what Yangqin had to do. Fortunately, Yangqin was now a famous alchemy master. As long as he was willing to come up with some high-level medicinal pills, it was not a big problem to exchange some fire seeds. If Yangqin was willing to exchange with the questioning inner heart pill, maybe even the 6th grade fire seed could be exchanged. For some masters of the Deshang stage like Wu Xiong, the 5th grade lunar true fire was not a difficult thing. The only thing they needed was to know where there was this kind of fire seed. It was not a problem at all to collect it. In addition to the fire attribute spirit power, the other spirit powers of the other elements, under the joint effect of the 3rd fire and 4th fire at the same time, were upgraded again and quickly rose to the 9th layer of the foundation stage. One more step, and he would enter the peak of the foundation stage. When the surrounding spirit power slowly calmed down, Yangqin finally opened his eyes slowly. With a trace of his spiritual awareness, Yangqin felt the difference from the foundation stage. The range was directly expanded several times. As long as he concentrated, Yangqin could even clearly perceive the movement within dozens of miles, and it was more sensitive than before. The 3 purities secret art was indeed amazing, which also made Yangqin even more strange. The Grand Supreme Elderly Lord, who cultivated the 3 purities secret art, did not notice the actions of the rebel army. Was there something like the sea pouring jasper cup to protect their whole body before they acted, so that their spiritual awareness could not detect them? This was obviously impossible. If this kind of thing was everywhere, it would be too cheap. Would it be worth the old Dragon King to collect it in the treasure house? Then, the only possibility was that there was another hidden story. On this issue, Yang Chun would not delve into it for the time being, and he did not have the ability to delve into it. People in the mortal world, why do they care so much about the affairs of the heavenly court? The important thing was that in his previous life, he cultivated for more than 300 years before he reached the condensing Dan, and in this life, Yang Chun only took a short period of more than 80 years. Yang Chun entered the Jidan realm. Gao Yu was even happier than her own realm. The only thing that made the two women somewhat dissatisfied was that Yang Chun was now very strong because of the cultivation of the yellow turban strongman body refining technique. He was simply a rude man among the rude men. Walking with him, there was a feeling of losing face. After the promotion of the general people, the overall temperament has changed. Although Yang Chun has entered the Jidan realm from the foundation stage, except for his body shape, there is no change at all from before. Yang Chun was still the same Yang Chun. Even the tone of his speech has not changed at all. Master, it's up to you. Yang Chun now challenged Gao Yu, the only one whose main spiritual power has not yet entered the Jidan realm. Let's see if your condensing Dan is faster, or if my other attributes of spiritual power condensing Dan are faster. Gao Yu herself was a fire attribute Jidan, and now her water attribute was about to enter the Jidan realm. Naturally, she understood that Yang Chen's words were not bragging, and immediately responded, "Let's wait and see." Chapter 547. This seclusion lasted for a total of 15 years. Yang Chun had long said that he would never come out until he condensed the Dan. For Yang Chen's decision, several elders of Chunyang Palace, including the head of the palace, unanimously agreed. Yang Chun was now their star of hope, and everyone wanted Yang Chun to take over the great responsibility of Chunyang Palace in the future. He was in retreat in Chunyang Palace, and his safety was absolutely guaranteed. At least there was no need for the few big shots to worry about it. The retreat of the three people this time was not similar to that of ordinary people. When others retreat, they would hate to be in the state of cultivation all the time, to warm their spiritual power, and then break through the shackles in one fell swoop and enter a higher realm. But for Yang Chun, Gao Yu, and Gong Sunling, the retreat was not so boring. They just followed the general way of cultivation, normal cultivation. They had to consolidate their cultivation base, and even the two women had to go outside the safety line to fight. Such a method of seclusion made many people feel that it was unfair to see it. The last time they refined the questioning inner heart pill was 40 years ago. Yang Chun had long said that he would refine a furnace after 30 years, and now it had been delayed for 10 years. It just so happened that Yang Chun still needed to consolidate his realm, and Gao Yu still had the last step and needed a period of consolidation before continuing to attack the Jidan stage. Yang Chun did not go out, but refined a furnace of questioning inner heart pills in the Immortal's cave. This time, the three people were all concentrated in the portal of the Jidan stage. This was the first time that Yang Chun came here, but it was not much different from the Foundation Establishment stage, but the spiritual power was much more intense. What was surprising was that in this Immortal's cave, in the portal of the Jidan stage, there were several alchemy rooms, just suitable for Yang Chen's alchemy. It was not known where some underground fire veins were locked in the alchemy room. Although they were not like the earth core fire, they were the most suitable for refining certain medicinal pills. Yang Chen no longer needed these fire veins. He had his own alchemy furnace and various kinds of fire seeds. What he wanted was just this place. The two women knew that he would not be in any danger within the safety line, so they did not protect him. Once again, they went out to fight with the puppets and monsters. While accumulating experience, they were also consolidating their own cultivation base. Especially Gao Yu. Although the fire attribute spirit power had long been condensed, the water attribute spirit power still stayed at the peak of the foundation stage. The water attribute spirit power fighting here was almost a cross-level challenge. For Gao Yu, every time she defeated a monster, it was a new process of understanding of herself. His spiritual power and spiritual awareness were much higher than the last time he refined the questioning inner heart pill. In addition, the spiritual power here was abundant. Yang Chun refining the questioning inner heart pill was more handy. Not only that, the grade of the profound spirit furnace was almost improved by at least a few grades compared with the last refining, so that the efficiency of refining was almost several times higher. Since he wanted to refine it, Yang Chun simply planned to refine more. In addition to handing it over to the sect, he also planned to keep some for himself. For others, the questioning inner heart pill was a great thing. For Yang Chun, it was just a snack supplement for himself when he consolidated his cultivation base for a period of time. The medicinal materials put into the profound spirit furnace this time were at least twice as much as the last time he refined a questioning inner heart pill. Yang Chun now has the confidence to control more medicinal materials. The 4C's mysterious coral liquid could ensure that there would be no big mistakes in the process of alchemy. However, Yang Chun did not add it. It did not have the slightest benefit to his own skills in alchemy. Yang Chun only needed to be prepared just in case. The refining process was far easier than the last time. The same time, but the amount of medicinal materials was 3 times that of the previous year. It was still successfully completed without any twists and turns. However, Yang Chun did not stop there, but continued to start the second grade refining. The questioning inner heart pill was one of the few high-level medicinal pills suitable for mortal cultivators among the medicinal pills that Yang Chun knew. It was just right to challenge the second grade refining. If others knew that Yang Chun was refining the second grade questioning inner heart pill at this time, it was estimated that they would immediately rush out to stop it. Not to mention anything else, just the first grade questioning inner heart pill that was refined by a furnace of medicinal materials that were 10,000 years old. Once the second grade refining failed, what kind of loss would it be? Under normal circumstances, even if some senior alchemists have a mind to challenge the second grade refining or even higher grades, the embarrassment of the raw materials in their hands will make them flinch. Just like the last time Deng Ya, Zhu Peng, and He Lianyun, even if they wanted to refine the second grade heaven-seizing pill, they could not get it. There was only one set of medicinal materials, and it was almost wasted. Where they have the chance to carry out the second grade refining. Only a rich guy like Yang Chun, who didn't take the 10,000 years elixir seriously, would have the financial glory to waste it like this. Of course, only someone like Yang Chun would have the kind of confidence and mentality that he was not afraid of the refining failure at all. Even if he lost a lot, he would have the confidence and mentality to attack a higher refining level. This was very important. The more you don't care about these elixirs, the less you will be affected by the value of the elixirs, and you can play your own level normally or even extraordinarily. Yang Chun really didn't care about these elixirs, and naturally there was not much pressure. In this mentality, the process of the second grade refining was exceptionally smooth, except for an occasional operating error in the middle of the process, which led to the loss of a few questioning inner heart pills. At other times, Yang Chun has been accurately and perfectly controlling the process. The second grade refining directly took Yang Chun a full 2 years, even longer than the time of the first grade refining. This was understandable by everyone. After all, Yang Chun was already familiar with the first grade refining, but the second grade refining was a challenge. The difficulty was even higher. For the level of medicinal pills like the questioning inner heart pill, whether it was the spiritual power or the fire, the requirements were at least twice as high as the first grade refining. Seeing that the second grade refining was completed, there were dozens of round second grade questioning inner heart pills in the pill furnace. Yang Chun suddenly began to hesitate. Should he grit his teeth and spend some second grade questioning inner heart pills to challenge the third grade questioning inner heart pills? The second grade questioning inner heart pill was the limit that Yang Chun could challenge with his current cultivation base. When this hesitation appeared, Yang Chun knew that it was time to give up. Without that kind of indomitable mentality, even if it was refining, there would be many failures. Moreover, the second grade questioning inner heart pill was taken out. It was enough to shock the world. If he really took out the third grade questioning inner heart pill, it would definitely make some sects restless. Huh. Yangchen took a long breath and began the process of collecting the pills. Several methods of collecting pills in the elderly Lord Pill scripture were used one by one, and the lid of the profound spirit furnace directly flew up. Suddenly, an abundant spiritual power ripple, centered on the profound spirit furnace, spread out to the surrounding. With a kind of momentum, it directly filled the entire space. Chapter 548. This spiritual power was neutral and peaceful, carrying a momentum that could calm people's hearts. Wherever it passed, no matter what monster it was, they all stood directly in place. At that moment, the minds of all the demonic beasts were empty, and there was no longer any fighting or killing. Of course, Gao Yu and Gong Sunling immediately noticed this aura. When the ripples of spiritual power swept past, the monster fighting with them suddenly stopped, and suddenly changed from the state of battle to calm. The two women themselves were the same, but their spiritual awareness cultivation base was still stronger than all the Jiedan stage monsters here. Yang Chen's alchemy was not hidden from them, and they immediately realized that Yang Chen's alchemy was completed. Hurrying back to the place where Yang Chen was alchemy, the two women saw Yang Chen sitting at the stone table in the yard with a smile, drinking jade dragon wine while waiting for them. On the table, there was also a plate of peeled thousand-year-old profound yang fruit as a side dish to go with the wine, looking very leisurely. Is the questioning inner heart pill refined? Gong Sunling asked when she saw him. Yang Chen nodded with a smile, but didn't say much. He just motioned the two women to sit around the table. He found 2 jade cups from his chinquin bag and filled them up for the two women. It seemed that a plate of thousand-year-old profound yang fruit was not enough for the 3 of them to taste the wine. Yang Chen had a 1,000-year-old ginseng and a 1,000-year-old sealwort in his hand. The sword light in his hand flashed a few times, and there were 2 more plates of ginseng and sealwort slices on the table. Unfortunately, there's no good seasoning, otherwise it can be made more delicious. Yang Chen sighed with a little regret, then picked up the wine glass. Master, senior sister, let's celebrate. Listening to Yang Chen's words, the two women were speechless for a while. The 1,000-year-old ginseng, 1,000-year-old sealwort, 1,000-year-old profound yang fruit. Any one of these things would make people fight over them. But here, they became Yang Chen's side dishes, and he even lamented that they didn't taste good. If someone knew that Yang Chen was wasting things like this, it was unknown whether they would rush up and beat up Yang Chen. At least Gao Yu and Yang Chen had such an impulse. Yang Chen wasn't trying to show off. After all, when he found out that there was another door in the herb garden, the 1,000-year-old elixirs at the outermost layer were no longer that unimaginable. To Yang Chen, such a large amount of food was just ordinary food. Eating and drinking was not a problem at all. Do you like delicious food? Gao Yu had never heard Yang Chen say that he had such a hobby. She couldn't help but ask with her eyes shining. Of course I like delicious food. Yang Chen certainly nodded. He used to be in a hurry to cultivate and didn't have much time to ponder these things. But now that he had succeeded in condensing the pill, he had a lot of time to squander and naturally would not reject it. In his previous life, he had tasted some of the best delicacies in the heavenly court. To be honest, those real masters did not reject these enjoyments. Blind hard work, sometimes it was not the key to becoming a master. On the contrary, it was the right way to relax and relax. Yang Chen's kindness, of course, the two women would not waste it. Not long ago, the two women had fought for a long time, and these supplements could just restore their battle losses. What's more, Yang Chen's alchemy success was naturally to be celebrated. After drinking a few glasses of wine, the two women were a little drunk. Yang Chen directly mixed some 4 C's mysterious coral liquid in the distiller's yeast and gave it to the two women again. When the two women woke up from a deep sleep, they didn't know what had happened, but they soon knew what the reason was. The 4 C's mysterious coral liquid was such a precious thing, and Yang Chen actually gave it to them in such a luxurious way, which made the two women inevitably feel a little distressed. Yang Chen pushed 2 small jade boxes in front of the two women. Take this medicinal pill immediately. It is good. The two women opened the jade box and immediately saw the second grade, questioning inner heart pill wrapped in a talisman in the jade box. The two women knew that Yang Chun was refining the questioning inner heart pill before, but they didn't know what the questioning inner heart pill looked like. Yang Chun didn't say anything. Although the two women had some doubts when they saw that it was a second-grade medicinal pill, they did not associate this medicinal pill with the questioning inner heart pill. Since Yang Chun said that there were benefits, the two women naturally would not doubt it. Anyway, Yang Chun would not harm them. The two women had even eaten the 4C's mysterious coral liquid, and naturally they were not afraid to accept a small medicinal pill from Yang Chun. No one was polite. They picked it up and removed the talisman, and then swallowed it into their abdomen. The effect of the medicine was quick and miraculous. The two women immediately noticed the abnormality and then quickly entered the state of cultivation. Gong Sunling was fine. She succeeded in condensing her Dan and was in the stage of consolidating her cultivation base. The questioning inner heart pill directly let her enter the deepest level of meditation. According to this way, it would only be good for her. There was no harm. Gao Yu was on the verge of breaking through. Because of the cultivation of the 10th water true essence, her cultivation base had been raised to the peak of the foundation stage. While consolidating her cultivation base, she was also looking for the opportunity to condense her Dan. This questioning inner heart pill directly let Gao Yu vaguely touch the direction of the Jidan stage. The spiritual power of the whole body was flowing with unprecedented concentration, and the surrounding spiritual power also began to resonate with Gao Yu. The questioning inner heart pill was worthy of being a questioning inner heart pill. It could indeed allow people to deal with their own cultivation in the most rational way. Gao Yu knew that her consolidation time was not long enough, and the realm of the peak foundation stage was still not completely stable. So she forcibly suppressed this idea of upgrading and began to use this resonance of spiritual power to start a steady cultivation. Yang Chen's face also showed a smile. This questioning inner heart pill could at least shorten the time for Gao Yu to consolidate her realm by half, which was enough for Gao Yu to condense her Dan. Both women were immersed in cultivation, and Yang Chun naturally had to protect them. There would be no danger here, but Yang Chun was also just in case. Once again, he took out the sword embryo of the first wood flying sword and began to further carve. This kind of carving was not directly operated on the flying sword, but Yang Chun used the purest first wood spirit power to condense into a secret technique and kept hitting it on the sword embryo so that the sword embryo could change its appearance according to his own needs. Yang Chun was very focused. Yang Chun, whose cultivation base had risen greatly, was not as difficult as before. Soon, the firstwood sword embryo, under the control of Yang Chun, began to slowly appear a sword tip, a sword blade, a sword ridge, a sword hilt, a sword edge, and a well-behaved flying sword began to slowly take shape. After the complete flying sword was formed, Yang Chun began to mark it with his spiritual awareness, and then began to use the heavenly dry treasure refining secret art and the earth fiend sacrificial formation secret art to start the sacrificial refining. Every sacrificial refining, he used the universe treasure raising secret art to maintain it. At this point, the Penglai Divine Wood Sword finally had the appearance of a flying sword, becoming the most basic flying sword.